Chapter 4903. That red robe fell heavily onto the ground. For a long time, she didn't get up, but no one was paying attention to that side. When the strength around his waist and the scent of sandalwood lingered around his body, he felt a chill run down his spine. In Yiqing Luo's eyes, all that was left was the face that was so close to her, like a god, noble and elegant. Ah Xian! Yiqing Luo called out softly. The man's eyes were as deep as ink, reflecting the young girl's charming and beautiful face. The moment their eyes met, it was as though there were only the two of them left in the world. Until, Overlord, a lady's gentle voice was heard from the side, breaking the tenderness in the room. Yiqing Luo looked sideways towards the open door. She saw a lady dressed in white walking over. The chilly wind blew over. The lady's skirt was rolled up like a blooming white lotus, pure and noble. It was that woman called Qingge. The scene was a little unbelievable. Nestled in Mo Xian's arms, Yiqing Luo was still in the mood to imagine a drama in her mind. Was this considered husband and cheating partner caught on the spot? Her and Chu Wu Xin, this cheating partner. It seemed their relationship was a little complicated. Above her head, Mo Xian's hoarse voice floated down. What are you thinking about? He didn't even look at Qingge from the corner of his eyes. His gaze was focused on Yiqing Luo, and he could clearly see the various weird expressions on the young lady's face. Just a glance. He knew that his young lady was daydreaming again. Yiqing Luo seemed as though she was caught red-handed as her cheeks flushed red and coughed violently. Nothing. Mo Xian scoffed lightly as his slender fingers pinched her face. Don't let your imagination run wild. Then have you ever let your imagination run wild? Yiqing Luo's narrow eyes curved as her eyes were filled with craftiness and ridicule. There was no ill feeling between the two of them. It made the man in red who was lying on the ground stand up shakily. Blood was gushing out from his chest. The corners of her lips were also bright red, but he was still smiling. The curve of his thin lips was clear and cold. That smile was startling to see. The scene in front of him was so warm that it could not contain anyone. It was as if it was mocking him, everything he had done. It was all just a joke. He couldn't interfere at all. Obviously, he already knew about this matter, but his heart would still hurt. Zhu Wuxin lowered his gaze and stared at the spot on his chest where blood was seeping out. The feeling of the blade stabbing into his chest still lingered in his body. But the pain here, it was not even half a beat away from the heart. Perhaps it was because his gaze was too deep. The man who was looking at the girl with deep affection suddenly raised his head. He glanced at Zhu Wu Xin indifferently, carelessly, disdainfully, and respectfully. His beautiful thin lips curled into a mocking smile. Then his hand slid down the girl's face and held her wrist. His fingers with distinct joints moved slightly. The blood-stained feather fan in the girl's hand fell into the man's hand. It's dirty. Let me clean it for you. The man's voice wasn't very soft. In the quiet and spacious room, it was extremely clear to the ears. It could even echo. It was like he intentionally said it for someone to hear. That glower flame fan, which was stained with Zhu Wu Xian's blood, was kept by Mo Xian. Zhu Wu Xin. Yiqing Luo seemed to be recalling. That Zhu Wu Xian whom she had stabbed, and was suddenly hit by Mo Xian's palm. Chapter 4904. Her expression was somewhat complicated. Her long and narrow cat eyes slightly turned sideways, as it congealed towards Zhu Wu Xian's direction. Looking at Zhu Wu Xin, who lowered his head and stared at her chest, his thin lips curled upwards, as though he was smiling, yet not smiling. Yiqing Luo pursed her lower lips slightly. Before she could open her mouth, the strength around her waist suddenly tightened. The man's deep and hoarse voice floated down from above. So Pavilion Lord has the hobby of snatching someone else's wife. That voice sounded very calm, but Yiqing Luo could still hear the deep chilliness in it. Like a sharp blade, it pierced towards Zhu Wu Xian's body. Zhu Wu Xin raised his eyes slightly, as his icy cold eyes met Mo Xian's gaze. That smile, which didn't look like a smile, was still hanging by the side of his lips. As though he was provoking Dmo Xian, he spoke indifferently. Snatch someone else's wife? She doesn't seem to be your wife. He laughed coldly. You're not engaged, so why can't I be pleased with her? Dmo Xian's gaze was like a gathering cold wind as it swirled up a whirlwind. Just as Yiqing Luo felt the chill as she raised her eyes to look at Dmo Xian, the man's emotions had already returned to normal. He didn't look angry and even curled his lips. His rosy red, thin lips, the curve was noble, with some undetectable complacency. I'm afraid Pavilion Lord has forgotten. Little Luo can only accept that the person standing beside her is me. The man's tone sounded very casual, but it made Zhu Wu Xian smile, which was filled with provocation and sarcasm, freeze on his face. Dmo Xian was very satisfied that his own words had caused a huge reaction to Zhu Wu Xian. The smile on his lips deepened. The casual expression on his brows also seeped out a few hints of provocation. Of course, I don't mind. There are people who are pleased with little Luo, because this means that this lord's foresight is indeed very good. This lord's little Luo, is very popular. Every word, every sentence was showing his sovereignty. Zhu Wu Xian's expression was getting uglier and uglier. But at this moment, Dmo Xian gave a cold and sarcastic smile. But Pavilion Lord's heart makes my little Luo very troubled. Pavilion Head's heart is troubling my little Luo. Pavilion Head's heart is troubling my little Luo. This sentence kept lingering in his mind. It was as if the replay button had been pressed. Zhu Wu Xian's dark eyes were like raging waves. His hands that were hanging by his side slowly clenched into fists. His fingertips turned white. Her cold face exuded an eerie coldness. His fondness, just to make Yiqing Luo so annoyed, especially when these words were said by Dmo Xian. Zhu Wuxin snorted lightly. Her cold face was filled with pain. He looked straight at Yiqing Luo as he asked word by word, "Do you also feel the same way?" The man's body was obviously a little unstable. Blood could be faintly seen seeping out of his fingertips that were covering his chest. Her red clothes were a little messy. From the looks of it, he was in an exceptionally sorry state. His gaze was abnormally scorching, as though it was going to burn her. Yiqing Luo met his gaze as her brows creased slightly towards this question of his. To tell the truth, if she wanted to answer, it would be a little complicated. She deliberated over her words in her mind. Perhaps it was because she took too long to think. That arm which was placed across her waist suddenly increased its strength. It was slightly tight around her waist. Chapter 4905. As though he was warning her. Answer properly. Death question. Death stare. Yiqing Luo. So how should she answer in order to satisfy this master? Was Dmo Xian called, smiling on the outside, but cursing in his heart? On the surface, he looked extremely confident and complacent, totally unconcerned about Zhu Wu Xian's thoughts towards her. In reality, in her heart, she hated Zhu Wu Xian's thoughts towards her deeply. Yiqing Luo secretly raised her hand and pinched his arm. You don't believe me? This kind of warning action must be condemned. Dmo Xian's inky eyes congealed deeply on the young lady's face. Of course I believe you, I know. The person Lil Luo loves the most is me. You know, and you still strangle me? Yiqing Luo pinched his arm again. Strangling me means that you don't believe me. Dmo Xian's brows were filled with a smile. So you admit that the person you love the most is indeed me? No. Yiqing Luo replied decisively. The person I love the most is myself. The person I love the most is you. That's enough. Dmo Xian lowered his head slightly, as his chin rested on the young lady's shoulder. Yiqing Luo's little hand pinched the back of his hand from time to time. The man's joints were clearly defined. His fair, jade-like fingers felt extremely good to touch. She let out a light snort. The man suddenly held her little hand, as his deep magnetic voice was mellow like fine wine. I'm because I care about you, so I'm not confident in myself. My fault. Don't be angry. The last at the end of the tone was raised, low and lazy. Like a little hook, it tugged at Yiqing Luo's heartstrings bit by bit. Bam! In front, a sound of a heavy object colliding was heard. It dispersed the warmth in the room. Yiqing Luo's vision had just turned over. She saw the figure who had knocked against the door, but was still swaying as he turned around to leave. That figure gave off a lonely and bitter feeling, as if he was fleeing for his life. Yiqing Luo's pink lips moved as she wanted to call out to Zhu Wu Xian, but the words that were about to come out, she swallowed it back. What was the use of calling him? For people like Zhu Wu Xian, to a person who was so paranoid that he was speechless, since he couldn't give any response, or use indifference to reject. She could see that too. Those actions and words that DMO Xian had said earlier were all completely different. It was all to make Zhu Wu Xian give up. However, looking at Zhu Wu Xian's swaying figure, which looked like it would fall at any moment even when he walked, and the blood dripping on the ground, Yiqing Luo's pink lips pursed even tighter. More or less, he couldn't bear to do it. Before he could speak, beside his ears, the man's faint voice floated down. Xiao Jiao, follow him, don't let him die. A ball of white light suddenly shot toward Zhu Wu Xian. The strong wind caused the tottering figure to lose its balance and fall to the ground. The huge nine-tailed fox swept its tail and hooked the man who was about to come into intimate contact with the ground. Then, in the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the underground palace of the Dark Palace. Xian. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and hooked his neck, rubbing her head against his face. Thank you. Because of Zhu Wu Xian, you're thanking me? The man's obsidian eyes sunk slightly as his tone sunk. Yiqing Luo shook her head as her pink lips held a bright smile. I want to thank you for loving me so much. She tiptoed and hooked the man's neck. Chapter 4906. She knew the reason why DMO Xian asked Little Nine to take care of Zhu Wu Xian. To her, Zhu Wu Xian's obsession and stubbornness made her troubled, and she could only face it coldly. But towards Zhu Wu Xian, she didn't hate him. After all, every love deserved to be respected, even if she didn't like Zhu Wu Xian. But not because of Zhu Wu Xian's feelings for her, and disregarding all the things that Zhu Wu Xian had done for her. After all, he had saved her several times. If she were to watch him leave with an injury and not care about anything, wasn't that too cold? In her heart, Zhu Wu Xian was actually considered as a friend. If he didn't have that obsession toward her, perhaps they were already friends. But even if she was worried about him, she couldn't let her own battle pet take care of Zhu Wu Xian and send him out of the Palace of Darkness base. If she made a move, she would definitely give Zhu Wu Xian hope. Then all the coldness that she had done previously would be wasted. DMO Xian apparently thought of this point. This man, he had always put his life on the line to think for her. Overlord, who is she? A sharp voice broke the warmth between the both of them. Dressed in a fluttering white robe, the woman with a delicate and elegant face strode towards them. Yiqing Luo's heels landed on the ground as she glanced sideways at Qinggu, who looked as though she was trying to kill her way over as her pink lips curled upwards. Zhu Wu Xian had left. Now another Qinggu had come. She and her Xian hadn't met each other for a long time. She didn't even have the chance to be alone with him. Furthermore, her Xian was hers. This lady, on what basis did she have to question her identity in this manner? Just as Qinggu walked over, Yiqing Luo had already stretched out her hand and pulled DMO Xian behind her. Her petite and slender figure stood in front of DMO Xian and also blocked Qingji's path. Her pink lips rose slightly as she tilted her head slightly and looked at her with a smile, which didn't look like a smile. Miss Qinggu has been looking for so long. Don't you know my identity? That smile was enchanting, like a dazzling mandala blossoming. Her long and narrow eyes curved into a smile. Qingji's eyes widened as she said in a dull tone, I'm sorry, the martial monarch never mentioned to me that there's another woman beside him. As she spoke, her cherry lips curled up into an elegant and distant smile. It sounded as though he was explaining the reason why he didn't know Yi Qing Luo. But every word and sentence was hinting at, if the man didn't mention his other half, it meant that the man didn't care about her at all and didn't acknowledge her identity at all. The last few words were another woman, as though hinting at Yi Qing Luo. Even if she really had an intimate relationship with DMO Xian, she was just one of them. Yi Qing Luo naturally understood the deep meaning behind the pigeon's words. Instead of getting angry, she smiled. Her eyes curved and she smiled. Ah Xian, you don't have to mention my identity to unimportant people. She lifted her eyes and looked at the man's handsome face. When she met the man's ink-like eyes, the dimples in her eyes bloomed. Following that, she stretched out her hand and circled around the man's neck. She buried herself into the man's broad embrace. Her face was plastered on the man's chest. Her vision was directed towards Qingge. Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly. Miss Qingge, am I right? Chapter 49:07. The young lady's words were filled with provocation. That long and narrow eyes were also filled with provocation. How could Qingge not hear it and not understand it? And she could hear it and understand it. How could DMO Xian not understand it? But DMO Xian lowered his eyes and stared at the young lady in front of him, like a cat protecting its food, stretching out its sharp claws to block him. That bright and flamboyant, absolutely stunning face. It was deeply reflected in his eyes. The young lady's actions had deeply pleased DMO Xian. The man's eyes were filled with tenderness and tenderness. His entire person seemed much gentler. Qingji's line of sight was fixed on DMO Xian, looking at the man's obvious, joyful expression. Suddenly, she felt a dull pain in her heart. She could tell how much the Overlord valued the young lady in his arms. That pampering and gentle look. This was the first time she saw such an expression on the Overlord. No, more accurately, as long as the Overlord's line of sight fell on the young lady, his entire person was soft. But the moment his line of sight shifted, he would become the Overlord of the past, all of his transformations, just because of that young lady named Yi Qing Luo. Her heart was extremely unwilling, so jealous that she wanted to explode. I'm sorry, I don't really like my man being stared at by other women for too long. That young lady in red flame moved her body, blocking Qing Ji's line of sight. After Yi Qing Luo stood still, her pink lips rose slightly. Her enchanting face revealed a hint of cold provocation. I'm different from Ah Xian. I am... Her lips curled up, smiling coldly. I am too possessive. I can't allow anyone to taint my man. She paused. Her gaze turned sharp. Her half-squinted eyes reflected a cold glint as she stared coldly at Qingge. Word by word, she spat out the last half of the sentence, including in my heart, tainting. The young lady's overbearing and arrogant attitude, extremely flamboyant. It was a declaration of its sovereignty. Qing Ji's exquisite and beautiful face twisted slightly, but very quickly it returned to normal. Continuing to maintain her elegance and gentleness, she ignored Yi Qing Luo and instead looked towards DMO Xian. The woman's voice was soft and gentle. Your Majesty, that man just now has met Master before. If he tells Master that you are here, I won't. DMO Xian's voice was indifferent. Even if there is, this Lord doesn't mind to dig it out from the dark corners. Other than reminding DMO Xian, Qing Ying's words were there was another deeper meaning. Firstly, it reminded DMO Xian. The current Yi Qing Luo and Zhu Wu Xian had an ambiguous relationship. Secondly, Yi Qing Luo and Chu Wu Xian's entanglement was unclear, which led to him being discovered by Chu Wu Xian. Thirdly, it was because Yi Qing Luo believed in Zhu Wu Xian and gave him a way out, which gave Zhu Wu Xian the chance to complain to his lord. But no matter what the reason was, DMO Xian had already rejected it without hesitation. DMO Xian's eyelids didn't even bother to look at her, and that deeply hurt Qing Ji's eyes. We haven't found any leads on Ku Ke. Qingge was rejected once and felt a little frustrated, so she could only bring out the topic which DMO Xian was most interested in, in an attempt to attract his attention. Chingu. The man suddenly opened his mouth, as his voice was cold and emotionless as he called out her name. Chapter 4908. Qingji's eyes lit up as she looked at Mo Xin shyly and joyfully. Overlord. You can go back now. The man's next sentence sent Qinggu straight to hell from heaven. Qingji's face turned slightly pale as her voice quivered. Overlord, we don't have much time. I want to spend some time alone with Lil Luo. The man's indifferent voice cut off Qingji's words. He wrapped his arm around the young lady's slender waist as he looked down at the person in his arms. At this moment, even his voice had turned gentle. I miss her. I miss her. These 3 words were like a hammer, pounding heavily on Qingji's heart. Qingji's face turned as white as a sheet. Her slender fingers clenched tightly as her eyes looked miserable, delicate, and pitiful. Immediately, she looked at Mo Xian with an aggrieved look. She turned around and jogged out of the room. Her jogging speed was slightly slow, as though she was waiting for the man to stop her. But it was impossible to stop her. Not even in this lifetime would he be able to stop her. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved in satisfaction as she stretched out her hand and touched Mo Xian's head. Her slender, fair fingers caressed his silky, black hair. Then she released his hair in satisfaction as her fingertips moved downwards and hooked his chin. Be good. I'll reward you. Following the young lady's words, her fingers that were holding the man's chin suddenly exerted force. Her eyebrows were tinged with a hint of a joyful smile. If it was any other time, based on Mo Xian's character, he would definitely scold Qinggu to leave, and he wouldn't explain anything. Things like, I want to spend some time alone with Lil Luo, I miss her, and so on. These were all purposely said for Qinggu to hear. This kind of self-conscious action to cut off any thoughts of the opposite sex. It was simply too heartwarming, especially women who were totally irresistible. In front of the opposite sex, who had improper thoughts, proactively showing affection, using his actions to prove that he was a married man. Conscious enough. No wonder he was her family's Xian. The light bulb had run away. What the hell? The entire room was left with Yiqing Luo and Mo Xian, and a little dumpling who was sitting on the ground, staring at Mo Xian in a daze. When he saw the 2 of them hugging each other and asking for a reward, Xiao Tuanzi had a feeling that her fairy was about to be snatched away. In the process of the young lady rewarding Mo Xian, he suddenly pounced onto Yiqing Luo's legs. His small body forcefully squeezed between the 2 of them. She had a small face carved out of jade, with distinct black and white, round and lively big eyes. She was very cute. Mo Xian lowered his head and looked at the little dumpling who was pushing him with all her might. A few rays of light flashed across his obsidian-like eyes. He bent down and picked up the little dumpling. Xiao Tuanzi was so frightened that she immediately grabbed hold of Mo Xian's collar. His shimmering purple robe was messed up by the scratches. He was not angry. He just used his hand to pinch Xiao Tuanzi's face. His brows rose as he looked at Yiqing Luo. When did you give birth to such a big child behind my back? Yiqing Luo, have a child? What do you mean by giving birth? How long had they been apart? Just a few months? I'm just teasing you. Seeing the young lady staring at him in shock, Mo Xian couldn't help but let out a light laugh. Chapter 4909. With his other hand, he pulled her into his embrace. Your little cousin looks a lot like you. Feng Shi and Feng Liqiong looked very similar. Feng Liqiong and Feng Ge looked very similar. Naturally, Feng Shi and Yiqing Luo looked very similar. If it wasn't for the fact that Feng Shi and Yiqing Luo's age didn't match up, they really had the feeling of mother and son. Especially, just now, the moment they pushed the door open. Chu Wuxian held Feng Shi in one arm as his eyes met Yiqing Luo's. Just for a moment, it gave one a kind of the feeling of family of 3. Mo Xian's eyes sunk slightly. He lowered his eyelids as he gazed at the person in his arms. Then, he lifted Feng Shi up a little. A family of 3? Heh, his kind was a family of 3, all right? Mo Xian's complicated inner thoughts. Yiqing Luo didn't sense it. Her attention was focused on another point. The young lady lifted her head in his arms as her narrow eyes widened and stared at DMO Xian. You know he's my cousin? You really knew that I'm in the Feng family in the God Realm, right? DMO Xian remained silent for a moment as he spat out a word. You're in the God Realm, and you know where I am. Why didn't you look for me? Yiqing Luo tugged his ear as she grumbled fiercely. Do you know that the main reason why I agreed to the reunion banquet is I know? The man's large palm held the young lady's fair hand. A low and gentle voice interrupted Yiqing Luo's words. I know. You want to use the reunion banquet to tell me where you are. Yiqing Luo struggled against his hand as she snorted. Since you know, why didn't you come? Not only did you not come, you're even hiding here secretly with that beautiful Miss Qing Gu, a lone man and a lone woman, lovey-dovey. Tell me the truth. Are you up to something behind my back? The young lady's fair fingers poked his chest fiercely. DMO Xian's unique daintiness was displayed. In front of outsiders, the young girl was ostentatious and bright, but in front of him, she was like a cunning cat, smart and cute. This made DMO Xian's eyes to be filled with a faint smile. His beautiful thin lips were frivolous, and his low and mellow voice entered her ears leisurely. Because I know that you are safe in the Feng family. Safe my ass. That little uncle of mine has set his sights on me. Yiqing Luo didn't believe that he didn't know what had happened between her and Feng Liqiong when she was in the Feng family. Because my little Luo is very smart. The man caught her little hand that was poking around. Most importantly, I believe that little uncle of yours won't really bear to hurt you. Yiqing Luo's brows rose. How much do you know? DMO Xian smiled without saying a word. As soon as he put on this pose, he did not intend to answer her question. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered to probe further. Her little hand hooked his finger and played with it. You're indeed the Overlord. Even if you're holed up in this place, you're still very clear about foreign trade matters. No. The man laughed softly. His voice was magnetic and pleasant to the ear. Anything related to you is the most important thing to me. A passionate confession. It made Yiqing Luo's cheeks blushed slightly. How could he break the rules like this? She didn't have time to ask for any information. She lost her ability to think after being teased by DMO Xian. A handsome man was simply toxic. Chapter 49:10. Yiqing Luo expressed that she was absolutely not a superficial woman who only knew how to look at appearances. She tried hard to adjust the expression on her face as she stared at DMO Xian with a straight face and started to make trouble out of nothing. Anyway, it's your fault that you didn't look for me at the first instance after you knew I was in the God Realm. See that? She was so overbearing and domineering. She would never succumb to DMO Xian's honey trap. That little lady's demeanor fell into DMO Xian's eyes, just like a kitten acting coquettishly. It tickled his heart. DMO Xian's eyes were filled with warmth and tenderness. His mellow voice was extremely pampering. Yes, it's my fault. There won't be a next time. Yiqing Luo, no way. This guy was too good at flirting. Her man was too handsome. What should she do when she was charmed by his honey trap every day? The reason why I'm here actually has something to do with you. DMO Xian carried Feng Shi and placed her on the bed. Then he held Yiqing Luo and walked toward the outer hall. Yiqing Luo pushed away the hand around her waist. Cece will be afraid to stay here alone. Afraid? DMO Xian narrowed his eyes and stared at Feng Shi. Will a man be afraid? Feng Shi's little head shrank. She felt that his gaze was a little cold. Just as she was about to stretch out her hands to Yiqing Luo, she heard the second half of the man's sentence. A man. He was a man. How could he not be a man in front of his fairy sister? Immediately, he changed his words. No, I'm not afraid. Cece? Yiqing Luo swatted away DMO Xian's hand and walked to the bed, bending over to touch his head. Don't listen to his nonsense. I'm here to accompany you. Cece is really not afraid. Feng Shi's little face was firm. Cece is a man. I'm not afraid to sleep alone. Saying that, the little girl obediently pulled the quilt over, lay down, covered herself, and closed her eyes. Her obedient look was very cute. All right. Behind her, the man's long arm scooped the young girl into his arms. We'll be in the outer hall. We'll be able to hear anything. DMO Xian did not allow for any explanation as he brought the young lady to the outer hall. Without Feng Shi, the third wheel, the atmosphere between the two of them was much more intimate. Yi Qing Luo sat on the mahogany chair as she grabbed the man's finger and played with it. Earlier you said, the reason why you're in the Palace of Seclusion is because of me. What do you mean by that? The man's ink-like eyes reflected the girl's enchanting face after the disguise. That pair of familiar, charming eyes seemed to be able to reflect into his heart. His eyes were filled with love. When Sheng replied, the power of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness is too complicated. If we want to eradicate it, we have to find a mastermind. But the mastermind is too cunning. It won't be easy to catch him. That's why I've always been thinking about why the person behind the scenes of Tenebra's Palace established such a force like Tenebra's Palace. What's their purpose? You seem to be the target of the Palace of Darkness. So, I'm guessing that if we find out what exactly does the Palace of Darkness need you to achieve the goal of the Palace of Darkness, we can solve the root of the problem. Yiqing Luo went into deep thoughts when she heard the man's words. She had always been curious about the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness. Even Xian, if you want to get rid of the other party. Just what kind of existence was that person? Perhaps the only way was to find out clearly. The motive of the Palace of Darkness. Then there would be a chance to find out the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness. Chapter 49:11. Yiqing Luo regained her senses from her deep thoughts as she glanced sideways at DMO Xian. Her little face was still pretending to pout coquettishly. Then, what has this got to do with you and that woman hiding here quietly? DMO Xian laughed lightly. Initially, when I wanted to send the Azure Aqua threads back to you, I received news from the Imperial Palace that I've been investigating. His slender fingers gently touched the little face of the girl who was pretending to be angry. So, I went temporarily. Yiqing Luo grabbed his hand. You found out the motive of the mastermind behind the secluded palace? For what he had said before, Yiqing Luo deduced it. DMO Xian nodded. Moreover, that motive is related to you. He leaned over slightly. His deep, inky pupils were fixated on Yiqing Luo without blinking. His eyes were very solemn. Under the night sky, it shone with a cold light. The people behind the gloomy palace are looking for a place. It's said that as long as we find that place, we'll be able to obtain the treasures within. Yiqing Luo. Why did this rumor sound so fake? It felt like some kind of scam organization was spreading unhealthy thoughts here. We want to build a harmonious society, to be a prosperous, strong, democratic, civilized people. This kind of baseless rumor could not be believed. DMO Xian looked at the young lady's rich expression and couldn't help but curl his thin lips. He continued, there's still the second half. Yiqing Luo tried to probe. The one who gets a treasure gets the world. DMO Xian didn't expect Yiqing Luo to know about it. He remained silent for a moment and nodded. Yiqing Luo. The world I'm talking about here doesn't just refer to the God realm. DMO Xian pondered for a moment as his eyes darkened. If we were to let all the big realms in this world merge back together, the world will definitely be in chaos. Do you believe that there's such a treasure? Yiqing Luo suddenly asked. DMO Xian replied without any hesitation. I don't believe you. I don't believe it either. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes. There are at least 20 to 30 realms in the world, if not 10. Even if you have the ability, you don't have the life to control it. Everything in the world had a balanced law of survival. If all the realms were to be united, how should the people of the major universes, big or small, with different abilities, levels, habits, and priorities, be controlled? Eventually, there would be chaos. But the mastermind behind the Nether Palace believed it. DMO Xian's eyes deepened. Moreover, this treasure indeed exists. Exist? Yiqing Luo's brows rose. You set up this base in the Palace of Secluded Darkness, just to investigate the location of that treasure. Demo Xian's eyes softened even more, his eyes filled with smiles. His girl was really smart. It was only a few words. He had already guessed the gist of it. He held the young girl's fair and delicate hand. Even if this treasure can't take over the entire world, it shouldn't be a problem to take over the entire God realm. Once the mastermind behind the Palace of Gloomy Darkness takes over the God realm, it won't be long before the destruction of the other realms. Yiqing Luo's vision had not been focused at all, as it was fixated on their hands, which were interlocked. Looking at the intertwined fingers of the two of them, she muttered to herself for some time. When she opened her mouth again, the expression on her face had already changed into a solemn and serious one. The place which the mastermind is looking for, don't tell me, has something to do with me? Chapter 49:12. Ever since Nirvana Realm, Palace of Darkness had been finding trouble with me, trying to control me. The person behind the scenes needs me to find that place, right? In Yiqing Luo's mind, she rearranged all the connections. Her thoughts became clearer and clearer. Palace of Darkness's mastermind's motive, is it related to my mother, the Emperor of God Emperors? When this guess was set out, Dmo Xian's smile deepened. He hooked the young lady's fair fingers lightly. His voice was clear. Lil Luo is so smart. His words indirectly admitted that everything she had guessed was true. Yiqing Luo's long lashes drooped slightly. Her eyes were a little faint, so, what you said, the place that Palace of Darkness is looking for is my mother's, which is also the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb, right? The Emperor of God Emperor's tomb. The place where the Emperor of God Emperors had passed away. That was where the treasures were buried. Any one of them was enough to stir up the various realms. It indeed could be called as a treasure. After all, the former Emperor of God Emperor's power and whatever they had when they were alive, they were all God relics. If one were to talk about the real motive of Palace of Darkness Mastermind, it was to find the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb, to obtain the Emperor of God Emperor's belongings. Everything that had happened before could be explained. No wonder, over at Palace of Darkness, she would always be able to see that stone wall which had her mother's totem carved on it. Every time she touched those stone walls, she would always fall into the periphery of the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb. This was all Palace of Darkness conspiracy. Those stone walls must be the mastermind behind Palace of Darkness, based on the information that she knew about the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb, to research a path to the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb, and, at the same time, to test if she really had the qualification to enter the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb. No wonder, when Palace of Darkness tried to deal with her several times, most of the time, their motive was to control her, not to kill her. It was because only she could open the Emperor of God Emperor's tomb. Actually, in other words, it was rumored that the Feng family had treasures. This sentence was not fake, because the so-called precious treasure, she was the one who knew about the divine Emperor's grave and entered it. Mysterious flame. W diagram. It was a map of the divine Emperor's tomb. What the mastermind of Gloomy Palace wanted was the mystic flame's W diagram. What Feng Liqian wanted, the so-called treasure of the Feng family, was probably the Xinyan W diagram. Apart from a map, there's also the method to enter the tomb of the divine emperor. It's also extremely complicated. Even that person from the Palace of Gloomy Darkness doesn't have a clue. Dmo Xian didn't refute Yiqing Luo's guess as he gently embraced her in his arms. But I'm guessing that the biggest key should still be you. After thinking through all these things, Yiqing Luo's feelings were rather complicated. Her head was pressed against the man's chest, feeling the warmth from his body. His cold body and uneasy heart gradually calmed down. Did you stay in the base of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows with Qing Gu to investigate how to enter the tomb of the Divine Emperor? No wonder when she peeped outside Qing Ji's room, that study room was filled with various books and scrolls of ancient books. She shut her eyes as she buried her entire body into his warm embrace. By his side, there was a sense of security which made her rely on him. Chapter 49:13. For the Palace of Darkness to kidnap Cece at this juncture, Is it because the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness has found a way to enter the Divine Emperor's tomb? Other than me, there's also Cece. Can she replace me to enter the Divine Emperor's tomb? DMO Xian gently stroked her hair with his fingertips. Fengxi is a descendant of the Feng family. Whether she has the qualification to enter the Divine Emperor's tomb, or whether she has any secrets about the Divine Emperor's tomb, the people behind the scenes of the Dark Nether Palace are not sure. I think the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness is just trying. His soothing voice was gentle and mellow, which could easily soothe all the uneasiness in her heart. I will send you and Fengxi out of here. As long as you don't leave the Feng family's territory, the Palace of Darkness will not dare to lay a hand on Fengxi. What about you? Yiqing Luo's little hand grabbed his collar as she raised her head slightly. Do you still want to stay here? I will look for you after I find the clues. DMO Xian patted her head. Yiqing Luo's little hand tightened. No, I don't want to. She couldn't always hide in the safe zone. She had to let DMO Xian overcome all the obstacles for her. I'm with you, not because I want you to do anything for me, but because I want to be with you. Yiqing Luo's voice was a little hoarse. Her long and narrow eyes were stained with a few sparkles. I said before, I want to grow to stand by your side, shoulder to shoulder with you. The purpose of my coming to the upper realm is to find out my background, to know why my biological parents would abandon me. Now I have found it. The Palace of Darkness's target is me, my mother. I can't keep hiding under your wings like this. Other than me, no one can really solve this matter. Following the young lady's determined voice, the light in her eyes became brighter and brighter. It was as if his eyes were filled with a sky full of stars. Unwavering, she looked at DMO Xian fixedly. Their eyes met. The young lady's eyes rippled slightly. Her pink lips curled into a brilliant smile. Ah, Xian, I want to be with you. Little Luo. DMO Xian sighed softly. His inky black eyes reflected her charming and enchanting face after her disguise. But under DMO Xian's gaze, Yiqing Luo felt that. It was as if he could see through the disguise on her face and see the real her. I can't do anything to you. The man chuckled and hugged her even more tightly. There was a rare gentleness in his voice. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles, like a cat who had gotten her way. Her charming eyes curved. Because I was born to be your nemesis, my dear. Overlord. The man did not speak again. However, the doting look in his eyes and the gentleness in his actions represented all the answers. She would not leave his side, but how could he bear to part with her? Therefore, let's keep him by our side. Under his watch, he could be more at ease. Hence, when DMO Xian pulled Yiqing Luo back to Qing Ji's room, Qing Ji's expression, it was extremely complicated. The expression she shot towards Yiqing Luo was the most obvious, jealousy and hatred between ladies. Meeting Qing Ji's gaze, Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up as she smiled sweetly at Qing Ge. My Xian has been troubling you for so many days. I'm really sorry. Chapter 49:14. Qing Ji's expression darkened slightly. She didn't respond to Yiqing Luo, but turned her gaze towards DMO Xian. Overlord, are you planning to leave? Qing Ji's tone was carefully probing. She was afraid that DMO Xian would really follow Yiqing Luo, intending to leave the secluded palace. She had yet to attract DMO Xian's attention. He hadn't gotten the respected Di Zun yet. She had allowed another woman to take him away from her hands just like that. Wouldn't she lose all her face? If this matter were to spread, where was her charm as a pure pigeon? Thinking of this, the coldness in Qing Ji's eyes intensified. Not waiting for DMO Xian's reply, he had already opened his mouth. We've finally found some clues if you were to leave now. Wouldn't it be a waste of effort? Yiqing Luo casually blocked in front of DMO Xian as her lips curled into a smile. Miss Qing, good, don't worry. Xian has no intention to leave the base now. Then, Qing Ge finally shifted her gaze towards Yiqing Luo. What did you mean by what you said earlier? Yiqing Luo's smile deepened. Her long and narrow eyes were like a rose in full bloom, enchanting elegance. Ah, What I said is right. Previously, it was my Xian who had troubled you for several days. From today onwards, both of us will have to trouble you, Miss Qingge. As if she could not see Qing Ji's increasingly gloomy face, she continued to smile sweetly. I believe, Miss Qingge, you would not reject me, right? Qing Ji's face darkened, and she clenched her fists. You want to stay here, too? Well, a woman, wherever Xian is, I will naturally be there. Yi Qing Luo replied with a smile. You two aren't married yet, right? Qing Ji's breath caught in her throat. Looking at the intimate posture of the two, she clenched her fists so hard that her fingertips turned white. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as she giggled. As long as I want to, I can even get married now. Qing Ji's gaze was filled with complex emotions as she looked deeply at Mo Xian, as though he was anticipating Mo Xian to say a rebuttal. However, the man didn't even glance at her from the corner of his eyes. His vision fell onto Yi Qing Luo's figure without blinking, as though in his eyes, other than Yi Qing Luo, he couldn't see anyone else. Qing Ji's breathing quickened. There were a few times when he wanted to open his mouth and tear apart the girl's provocative and bright smile that was filled with mockery. But in the end, she suppressed the impulse in her heart. Her delicate eyebrows were slightly furrowed. Her gentle and elegant face revealed her noble majesty. She pursed her lips and said in a deep voice, Miss Feng, it's not that I don't want to take you in, but this is the territory of the Palace of Darkness after all. She purposely emphasized the word take in and smiled coldly. The Overlord is staying here because I believe in your strength. Even if his lordship notices your existence, the Overlord can still leave the base of the Palace of Darkness quietly. But, Miss Feng, I don't think you can do it. Her judgmental gaze sized up Yi Qing Luo from head to toe. His eyes were filled with mockery and disdain. Miss Feng, as Lord Dizun's woman, you should learn how to share Lord Dizun's burden. You shouldn't recklessly create trouble for Lord Dizun just because Lord Dizun loves you. Qing Ji's every word was belittling Yi Qing Luo. In Qing Ji's eyes, Yi Qing Luo was merely a cultivator with low ability. Chapter 49:15. The only one that was presentable could only be the identity of Feng family's Mississippi. The most important thing was Feng Qing Luo. This Feng family's miss was not legitimate. She was merely the Feng family's adopted daughter on a whim. If she were to appear, presumably, the Feng family would not offend her just for this adopted daughter. Qingge thought in this way, as the disdain in her eyes deepened. Facing Qing Ji's sarcasm, Yi Qing Luo's expression had not changed at all. Her eyes were still curved, as the ends of her eyelids arched upwards, curling into a glistening expression. That enchanting face was as exquisite as a blooming rose, blooming with the most dazzling elegance. Regarding this point, Miss Qingge need not worry. Yi Qing Luo's voice was clear and melodious, like pearls falling on a plate, extremely pleasant to the ears. I can't, Xian can. He will protect me. As Xian's woman, actually it's not as complicated as what Miss Qingge thought. As for me, as long as I stay by Xian's side, enjoying his pampering, that's enough. Yi Qing Luo hugged Mo Xian's arm, leaning her head towards him, smiling sweetly. Women should be pampered, doted on, loved. But for someone like Miss Qingge, at such an age, still alone, you should not understand this feeling. Qing Ji's expression, before Yi Qing Luo's words finished, seemed to be covered by dark clouds. The anger in her eyes was like a blazing fire. Her exquisite and elegant face uncontrollably twisted slightly. Qingge, Mo Xian opened his mouth indifferently as he shot a glance at Qingge. If it's not convenient, I will return to the Feng family with little Luo first. I'll have to trouble you to send the ancient books here to the Feng family. The moment the man opened his mouth, he had completely stated his stand. Qingge was an intelligent person. How could she not hear the warning in Mo Xian's tone? If it was any other time, Mo Xian didn't even want to say a word more to her. These few days in Mo Xian's base, the words he said probably did not exceed 10 sentences. But today, the words he said exceeded the sum of all the words he said these few days. However, all of this was for the sake of that girl. A complicated light flickered in Qing Ji's eyes. From the bottom of her heart, the thought of obtaining DMO Xian seemed to have taken root and sprouted, twining around her body and mind. The more he behaved this way, the more she wanted him. Such a perfect and outstanding man. It should belong to her. How could that Miss Feng of the Feng family compare with her? You want to stay here? That's great. Let Feng Qing Luo witness with her own eyes how her man, little by little, sank into her land of gentleness. When Qingge looked up again, her expression was once again elegant and gentle. Her cherry lips curled up, and her beautiful eyes focused. My lord won't be here today, so it's not inconvenient. Since the Overlord has no objections, I naturally have no objections. She looked at Yi Qing Luo, Miss Feng, then please stay here and stay well. Thank you, Miss Qingge. Yi Qing Luo's smile did not diminish. Following that, she raised her head and looked at DMO Xian, displaying her lovable charm to the extreme. Ah Xian, which room are you staying in? Bring me there to rest. Saying that, both her hands hooked on the man's neck, and with a leap, she jumped into his arms. The man naturally wrapped his arms around her waist to prevent her from falling. The action between the two of them seemed as though they had rehearsed it countless of times. It had already formed into their exclusive tacit understanding. Chapter 49:16. This one action fell into Qing Ji's eyes. This made the jealousy in her heart burn even more, as her brows overflowed with uncontrollable jealousy and hatred, until she saw DMO Xian condescending himself, as though he was carrying a precious treasure, carrying her as he turned around and left the study. Her jade-like fingers clenched tightly as the smile on her face slowly turned cold. She slammed the table heavily. The table full of books and paintings were scattered all over the floor. That damned Feng Qing Luo. She must have provoked her on purpose, intentionally being so intimate with the Overlord. He had purposely shown her how much the Overlord doted on her, and how much he loved her. Tried to use this method to make her give up. Impossible. Princess. A black shadow suddenly appeared out of thin air and knelt down respectfully in front of Qingge. Do you need me to share Princess's worries? No need. Qing Ji's eyes were gloomy. Her elegant face revealed a trace of noble arrogance. It's just a man. There's no need for you to do anything. She raised her delicate eyebrows, slightly raised her chin, and arrogantly said, The Overlord is a prey that I have my eyes on. Towards prey, I prefer to tame them myself. You better hurry up and find out the secret of the Palace of Darkness as soon as possible. My lord is too sensitive. The longer time passes, the easier it is for your existence to be discovered. Qing Ji's eyes sunk like a deep pool, as deep as the sea. By then, there's a high possibility that I will be suspected by my lord. Yes, the black shadow's tone was solemn. After spitting out a word respectfully, the figure disappeared into thin air as soon as it appeared. The room fell into a dead silence once again, as if everything that happened earlier was just an illusion. DMO Xian carried Yi Qing Luo all the way to the room next door. Pushing the door open, the room was filled with a unique sandalwood scent from DMO Xian's body. Yi Qing Luo circled DMO Xian's neck, raised her brows, and looked at him. Looks like that Miss Qingge treats you quite well. The room she arranged for you is in line with your style. DMO Xian put her down, still jealous. Jealous? Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly. Is she worthy? Could a rival in love that posed no threat at all be considered a rival in love? At most, she was just a die-hard fan of DMO Xian. You're not jealous? Why do you look so pale? DMO Xian's slender jade-like fingers pinched her face as he gave a low chuckle. It's all right to admit that you're jealous. I like to see you being jealous because of me. He took the girl's hand and held it tightly. I like to see you blocking my way, blocking other people's covetous eyes. I like to see you like a female warrior, declaring your sovereignty. I like seeing you care about me. The man's gentle and mellow voice was like fine wine, seeping into her eardrums and flowing into her heart. Yiqing Luo felt slightly tipsy. Her cheeks were flushed and her heart was beating rapidly. She felt as if she was floating on air. This man, she began to speak words of love. It was really a little hard to control. When did he become so good at flirting? The girl's eyes were filled with shyness. The man moved closer. Why aren't you saying anything? Yiqing Luo lowered her head and raised her hand to block that peerless, handsome face that she couldn't control and pressed it back. Yes, I'm jealous, all right? Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49:17. Her outstretched hand. She was held by the man's large palm. Beside her ear was his deep, husky, and mellow laughter. It made Yiqing Luo's heart itch. She pushed him away and jumped onto the bed. Leaning against the headboard, she hugged her knees and glared at him. In times of crisis, we need to build a harmonious socialism. Prosperity, democracy, literacy, harmony, freedom. Stop flirting with me. Socialist core values do not allow it. Emotion. There was a faint melancholy that he didn't know where to start from. Yiqing Luo put on a serious face. That Qingge, can you really trust her? Emotion sat down beside her. There's no need to believe me. I just need her position in the Palace of Nethergloom to make it easier for me to move around. I think there's something about her that makes me feel very uncomfortable. Yiqing Luo shifted her body over and leaned on him. It's better to be careful. If your honey trap fails and she bites back, we'll be in deep trouble. Xian's thin lips curled up frivolously as he glanced sideways at her and pinched her little face. My little Luo, is really getting more and more powerful. Yiqing Luo grabbed his hand. You've long sensed it? Yes. Xian held her little hand and pinched it in his palm. Her motive should be the same as the person behind the Nether Palace. We don't have to interfere. Sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as her pink lips curled into a teasing smile. Are we going to sit back and reap the benefits? Xian's fingers, which were pinching her little hand, paused as he looked at her solemnly. You can sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, but don't think of reaping the benefits of the fishermen. You don't have to care about the dispute between the two forces. Yiqing Luo didn't ask why as her long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Then what about you? Xian froze for a moment and pulled her into his arms. Don't worry about me. I won't do things that I'm not sure of. That is to say, you will participate in their dispute. Yiqing Luo's head leaned against his chest. Her voice didn't reveal much emotion. Xian's arms tightened. Because I have no choice but to interfere. She could hear the hoarseness and nervousness in the man's voice. She reached out and circled his waist. She pressed her face against his chest. He listened to the heartbeat in his ears. She sighed softly and said, But do you think this is something that I cannot participate in just because I don't want to? Xian was silent. Yiqing Luo's little head arched slightly. Xian, if their motive is all for the God Emperor's tomb, then there's absolutely no lack of me. As my mother's daughter, this is my unavoidable fate. Xian, I know, you will definitely protect me, so I'm not worried at all. The man's low sigh floated down from above. The two of them hugged each other and did not speak again. The next day, calculating the time, it should be morning. The base of the Palace of Darkness was still dark. Outside the door, a large red lantern flickered and emitted an extremely faint light. Under the darkness, a ray of light approached from afar and stopped at the door of the room. An elegant and pleasant voice came from the door. Lord Dizun, can you get up now? I asked the kitchen to prepare some of your favorite breakfast dishes. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes rose as she looked at Xian without blinking. The young lady's death stare made Xian's body stiffen. Just as he was about to reject her, the young lady's soft voice rang first. Miss Qingge has the heart. Then I'll have to trouble Miss Qingge to send the breakfast in. Seventh miss who likes trash. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love for everyone to collect. Seventh miss who likes trash. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love for me. Chapter 49:18. The person outside the door was stunned for a moment. The atmosphere in the air seemed to have turned much colder. Yiqing Luo naturally felt the change in the air as her pink lips curled into a teasing arc. After some time, the room door was pushed open. Qinggu was dressed in a white muslin long dress as she walked into the room with a fairy aura. That white lotus arm was carrying an exquisite and fragrant breakfast as she walked in leisurely. Her posture was elegant and her smile was just right. But the moment she stepped into the room, Qingji's smile froze on her face. She almost couldn't hold on to the tray she was carrying. Her face turned slightly pale as she looked at the scene in front of her in shock. The young lady dressed in red was hugging a 5 to 6-year-old boy with bright eyes and white teeth. She sat on the red sandalwood chair as her fair fingers pinched Xiao Tuanzi's face from time to time, while Dmo Xian, who was dressed in a black robe, stood behind the young lady. His slender fingers rested lightly on the back of the chair. His eyes drooped slightly as his deep black eyes gazed tenderly at the young lady. Golden boy and jade girl, a perfect match. It was a déjà vu feeling of family of three. This warm picture of a family. It was like a thorn, piercing into Qingji's eyes. The expression on her face was overcast, dark and gloomy. Miss Qinggu, what's the matter? Yiqing Luo's slender eyes raised as she looked at Qinggu with a smile. That bright-eyed Xiao Tuanzi and the young lady looked over at the same time. Two similar faces reflected in Qingji's eyes. Qingji's pupils constricted. This is yours? Fengqing Luo actually had the Overlord child? How could this be possible? Look at this child's age. This meant that Fengqing Luo and the Overlord had known each other for at least 5 to 6 years. Yiqing Luo lowered her head to look at Xiao Tuanzi in her arms as she slowly stood up and fought alongside Dmo Xian. Her fingertips brushed against Xiao Tuanzi's face as she asked with a smile, My CC, looks adorable, right? The man cooperated as he circled his arm around the young lady's shoulder. It was also an indirect acknowledgement that they were a family of 3. Qinggu held her breath and stiffened. She placed the tray on the mahogany table and smiled in disbelief. This child looks very much like Miss Feng. Of course. After all, he was her little uncle's biological son. After all, he looked very similar to her mother. But when Qinggu heard this, she was stunned. It was a disguised admission. She and this little ball were indeed mother and son, because only a mother and a son would look alike. You guys eat slowly. I still have something to do, so I'll be leaving first. After saying this, Qinggu turned around and left the room with a stiff body. Yiqing Luo placed the little dumpling on the chair and placed the breakfast in front of him while raising her eyes to look at Dmo Xian. Did she misunderstand something? Let her be. Dmo Xian didn't really care. Yiqing Luo pulled Dmo Xian along and sat down by the side. Dmo Xian looked at the gentle and attentive young lady taking care of Feng Xi as she ate, which made him think, if in the future Lil Luo also had a child that belonged to the two of them, Lil Luo would definitely be a very good mother. Child end of this chapter. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Chapter 49:19. She stopped feeding and stared suspiciously at Dmo Xian from head to toe. One of you Freeview whole page, please Baidu search. The man raised his hand and held the young lady's slender wrist. His slender fingers easily picked up the breakfast in the young lady's hand. After that, he held the young lady's hand in his palm. When do you intend to marry me? He stared at her eyes and asked seriously word by word. Yiqing Luo. So exciting early in the morning? Dmo Xian's eyes were clear. His peerlessly handsome face was like a god. I also want to have a child with you. His gaze slowly slid down to Yiqing Luo's stomach. Yiqing Luo. She had just woken up and started dreaming. Dmo Xian's long arm suddenly exerted force. The young lady was immediately brought into his arms. This action, Yiqing Luo had yet to react. She bumped into Feng Shi and fell into Dmo Xian's arms. Luckily, Feng Shi's reaction was fast, and she immediately stabilized herself when she fell off the chair. Shi, are you all right? Yiqing Luo immediately pried Dmo Xian's hand away and held Feng Shi's shoulder as she sized him up. Feng Shi shook her little head and blinked her clear eyes as she looked at Dmo Xian timidly, as though she was afraid of something. Yiqing Luo carried Feng Shi back to the chair and turned to stare at Dmo Xian. Don't scare Shi. Dmo Xian. He looked down at his empty arms. He felt that he had fallen out of favor. His gaze was filled with hidden bitterness as he stared at Yiqing Luo. Then you hurt me. What about this? That expression was like a large, loyal dog. It made Yiqing Luo's eyes soften. She stared at Dmo Xian unhappily. There are still so many things that have not been settled. How can we talk about marriage? Not to mention the sacred treasure. Dmo Xian drooped his head. His thick black hair hung down slightly and scattered on both sides of his cheeks. He revealed a somewhat dispirited posture. Yiqing Luo. This pitiful, like an abandoned, large, cute dog expression really made one unable to bear it. This man always had all kinds of fancy ways to make her compromise. Yiqing Luo sighed and softened her tone. It's not like I'm not marrying you. In this lifetime, I will only marry you and not anyone else. I'll only give birth to your baby. So, you don't have to worry at all. It was just a few simple words, and successfully smoothed out Dmo Xian's fur. Thousands of words of love. Not as good as one sentence, I won't marry anyone but you. Dmo Xian raised his head, his obsidian-like eyes sparkling and translucent. The rippling glazed light emitted a sincere and resolute light. He gazed at the young girl and said seriously and solemnly, I will marry no one else but you. A faint smile surfaced on Yiqing Luo's brows. She placed her hand on the man's large palm. Just as she was about to speak, someone tugged on her clothes. Xiao Daoanzi's crisp voice rang out. Fairy sister, Cici wants to eat that dumpling. Yiqing Luo immediately retracted her hand and turned her head to look at the edge of the table, at the stack of red bean dumplings that Xiao Daoanzi couldn't reach, even if she stood on the chair. She stretched out her hand and placed the red bean dumpling in front of Feng Shi. Eat carefully, don't choke. Feng Shi nibbled on the dumpling contentedly. Dmo Xian. Damn, this lord has really fallen out of favor. He complained again as his gaze swept straight to Feng Shi. Aren't you going to send this kid back to the Feng family? Fourth watch. End of this chapter. Waste 7th miss. Overlord, be gentle with your love. Waste 7th miss. Overlord, be gentle with your love. Chapter 49:20. Yiqing Luo poured a cup of water for Feng Shi before looking at Dmo Xian. The entrance is guarded tightly by the disciples of secluded palace. There's no way out. If possible, she wanted to send Feng Shi back to the Feng family first. After all, Feng Shi was staying here. It was an additional layer of danger. Furthermore, she wanted to take the opportunity to return to inform her grandfather that she was safe, to prevent him from letting his imagination run wild at home. And Feng Liqiong's side would also alert the enemy. But this secluded palace base, it was easy to enter but hard to leave, especially under the premise that she and Feng Shi were discovered. Wanting to leave was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Dmo Xian's body leaned against the back of the chair. His peerless brows were filled with laziness, which made that elegant and handsome face even more unbridled. Lil Luo, I must have forgotten. There's still me? Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up. That's right. Her dear Ah Xian. It should be easy for him to leave the secluded palace base. She couldn't. There was still Ah Xian. Looking at the man's arrogant look, how could Yiqing Luo not understand what he was thinking? The young lady stood up slowly. Her fiery red dress fluttered and a blooming rose spun in midair. She had already walked past Feng Shi and stood next to Dmo Xian. Two slender fair hands were placed on his shoulders as she leaned slightly and smiled. Then, I'll have to trouble my dear, Ah Xian. Mo Xian raised his brows lazily as his beautiful thin lips curled upwards, giving a devilish smile. Why? You only remember that I'm your dear husband when you need me? Every moment and every second, I'm thinking of Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo's voice was soft and tender as she bent over slightly, leaning on his body. Huh, the man scoffed. A woman's mouth is a liar. Yi Qing Luo. Where did her Ah Xian learn this sentence from? Her Ah Xian actually learned bad things. If it wasn't for the fact that she kept the core values of socialism in mind, she would have used her big move. Yi Qing Luo took a deep breath as her little hand pinched the man's face, changing her big move to a small move. Don't tell me you wish for me to carry a little dumpling every day and accompany you by your side? Mo Xian. No, he didn't want to. It was rare to meet Lil Luo again. He only wanted to be with Lil Luo at all times. I don't want to fall out of favor. So, I'll have to trouble you to send Cece back to the Feng family. Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved into a crescent shape. At the same time, pass a message to maternal grandfather so that he can be at ease. Mo Xian stared at Yi Qing Luo's crafty, smiling face. With a flip of his hand, he pulled her into his embrace. His chin rested on her head. The voice that floated down was filled with a deep sense of helplessness. You've got me, haven't you? Yi Qing Luo gave an innocent and harmless smile as she blinked her eyes and spoke seriously. My grandfather is very concerned about the man I've taken a fancy to. So when you send Cece off, you'd better put on a good performance if you can't get past my grandfather. Get married? Have a baby? This isn't something you can do with that. The girl patted his shoulder with a serious expression. I believe that my Ah Xian is the best. Qingga knocked on the door once again. Yi Qing Luo looked outside the door at that graceful figure as her lips curled into a smile with unknown meaning. She got up and opened the door. Miss Qinggu, what's the matter? When Qinggu saw Yi Qing Luo, her expression turned gloomy for a moment. Her gaze went past Yi Qing Luo and looked into the room. I remember, that child is the one Princess Ling Long is looking for, right? Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49:21. After Qinggu went back, the more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was amiss. Feng Qing Luo looked no more than 15 or 16 years old. Feng family had announced to the outside world that she was 16 years old, and that child looked no different from 5 or 6 years old. How could he be the child of Feng Qing Luo and the Overlord? Qinggu recalled that Princess Ling Long had led the secluded palace's disciples and attendants to search for the person. She immediately understood. She immediately sent someone over to Princess Ling Long to find out. Then she knew everything. That child was the person Princess Ling Long was looking for. His identity was Feng family's young master, the biological son of the acting god emperor. His relationship with Feng Qing Luo was merely that of cousin brother. After clarifying all these, how could Qinggu still not understand? Feng Qing Luo, that little slut, was teasing her at such a young age. Not even married, yet she shamelessly impersonated herself and gave birth to the Overlord's child. Shameless. Qinggu was furious and annoyed, but she still had to maintain her elegant image. In this way, the attendant Xiao Qi, whom Princess Ling Long wanted to capture, it was probably Feng Qing Luo. If she were to inform Princess Ling Long about Feng Qing Luo and the Feng family's young master, Qing Ji's eyes flashed past a deep and obscure glint. Miss Qinggu only found out now. The young lady's clear voice interrupted Qing Ji's thoughts. I thought Miss Qinggu already knew about it. It sounded like a very normal sentence. However, Qinggu could always hear the sarcasm hidden in the laughter. Qing Ji's face sunk a little. The young lady was still smiling sweetly. Her narrow eyes curved and the corner of her eyes outlined a little ripple, which made her enchanting face even more attractive. So, Miss Qinggu wants to tell Princess Ling Long? Yi Qing Luo tilted her head, vividly displaying the young lady's innocence. this purity and innocence. This caused Chingu to feel even more frustrated in her heart. She really couldn't understand. How could the high and mighty Overlord be the same as those ordinary people? He actually liked this kind of unpresentable lady. She thought that based on the Overlord's identity and status, those who were worthy to stand by his side must be iron-blooded, outstanding ability, and able to share the Overlord's worries. But not like this Feng Qing Luo. Apart from a slightly passable face, there was nothing else. What else was outstanding about it? The Overlord was actually such a shallow man. The more Qinggu thought about it, the more vicious her eyes became. She narrowed her beautiful eyes and sneered. Your suggestion is not bad. If I tell Princess Linglong, neither you nor the young master of the Feng family will live. I'm so scared. The girl pretended to be scared and patted her chest. Her long and thick eyelashes blinked. Then she changed the topic and smiled, but, Miss Qinggu, I'm afraid you've forgotten that I still have. Xian. She gently touched her chin with her slender fingers and smiled brightly. Before Princess Linglong came, Xian must have already brought us away from the base of the Palace of Darkness. The pigeon's original intention was to see the young girl panicking, but it didn't expect to be fed a mouthful of dog food instead. Was he showing off to her, provoking her? Wan Qinggu clenched her fists tightly. Her gaze swept across the room. Where's the Overlord? He saw that I don't have a good appetite, so he went to prepare some food for me. Yi Qing Luo casually replied. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49:22. An invisible display of affection was simply a critical hit. This was clearly a blatant provocation. How could Qinggu tolerate it any further? Miss Feng, you are at least considered as the Overlord's woman. I don't expect you to be of any help to the Overlord, but at least don't drag him down. In her eyes, the Overlord was as noble and elegant as a god. He was actually preparing food for a woman? Was this still the Overlord that she knew? Qing Ji's words. All of them were belittling Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes as she explained seriously. It's not that it can be considered as such, but it is. She repeated every word. Not just now, I am the Overlord's future wife. She finished her sentence with a serious face. Her pink lips curled into a sweet smile. May I know from what standpoint is Miss Qinggu speaking these words to me? The words that came out of that smiling young girl's mouth were particularly piercing. No matter how dumb Qinggu was, she could tell that this innocent-looking young lady was not someone easy to deal with. The so-called innocent look was merely a facade to deceive the Overlord. Not waiting for Qinggu to speak, the young lady's long and narrow eyes were already curved as she slowly walked towards her. The fiery red dress was like an excited fire elf, burning with a seductive flame. The young lady seemed to be stepping on a sea of fire. She curled her pink lips into a sweet and soft smile, but her long and narrow eyes were filled with an oppressive aura. Miss Qinggu knows of my existence, but she purposely sends flirtatious glances at Xian right in front of me. Miss Qinggu, do you want to be my Xian's concubine? Qing Ji's pupils suddenly congealed. An obscure hurricane surged in her eyes. She was a dignified princess. How could she possibly be someone's concubine? This was simply a humiliation. However, the young lady seemed to be unable to see Qing Ji's gloomy expression as she smiled sweetly. Although, to be my Xian's concubine is considered as your blessings for several lifetimes. But her charming eyes were clear and bright, and a smile spread in her pupils. I won't allow it. As for me, I'm very possessive. I only want to have Xian to myself. The others don't even have a chance. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as her dazzling and bright face was filled with absolute elegance. So, with this kind of thinking of snatching my future husband, what qualifications do you have, what stance do you have, to stand in front of me, preaching to me? The girl was clearly smiling. Her eyes were also filled with that sweet and soft smile. However, The flames on her body and the cold light in her eyes were obviously provocative. Qing Ji's face darkened. This girl was indeed different from what she appeared to be on the surface. Dizun wasn't around. He would reveal his true colors. Her eyes turned gloomy as she suddenly closed in on Yi Qing Luo, stretching out her hand and locked on her neck. Feng Qing Luo, say it again. No matter how many times I repeat it, it's still the same. Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't change as the corner of her eyes curled into a ridiculing smile. Miss Qingge has flown into a rage out of humiliation. Qingge locked onto Yi Qing Luo's neck tightly as she pressed her against the wall. Feng Qing Luo, don't be unbridled just because you have the support of the Overlord. If I want you to die, even if the Feng family comes, they can only swallow it in silence. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes in surprise. I didn't expect that as an esteemed guest of the secluded palace, Feng family, the acting god emperor's family could swallow in silence. Miss Qing Ji's real identity, don't tell me. Chapter 49-23. Qing Ji's expression congealed. A trace of evil aura appeared in the depths of his eyes. The 5 fingers on the young lady's slender neck were filled with murderous intent. For a moment, that elegant and noble lady instantly turned into an Azura killing god. What do you know? Qing Ji's voice was gloomy, as though it was wrapped in an extremely cold storm. The sudden increase in strength on her neck made Yi Qing Luo's expression change slightly. But although Qing Ji's murderous intent was strong, the strength was not to the extent of taking one's life. It was probably because of some misgivings. Yi Qing Luo moved her neck, and her fair hand slowly covered the back of Qing Ji's hand. She didn't try to pry Qing Ji's hand away. She just carelessly poked Qing Ji's hand bit by bit. Her voice was languid and calm. Miss Qingge is so agitated. Could it be that I accidentally poked into your unspeakable thoughts? Qing Ji's eyes were covered with frost, murderous intent. What on earth do you know? Originally, I didn't know anything, but now it makes me curious. What secrets do you have? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose slightly. Her eyes filled with a smile. Miss Qingge, why not? Satisfy my curiosity? I'm afraid you won't live to know. Qingge stared at Yi Qing Luo's eyes, as though trying to see if she was lying from her eyes. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes. Really? Then you can give it a try. The young lady intentionally raised her neck so that she could easily clasp her neck. But you need to think about how to explain to Hua Xian. Qing Ji's hand suddenly froze. The sinister expression on her face, which was filled with murderous intent, slowly receded. Yi Qing Luo fearlessly curled her pink lips and continued. Miss Qingge is so powerful that my godfather, acting god emperor, doesn't dare to provoke you. I wonder, will the imperial palace not dare to provoke you? Feng Qing Luo. Qingge gritted her teeth and spat out her name. She stared at her angrily for a long time. Then she angrily released her hand from her neck. Yi Qing Luo's expression was relaxed as she carelessly touched her own neck, slightly twisting her neck as she indifferently raised her brows. I'm really curious now. Miss Qingge, your real identity, what is it? Yi Qing Luo's expression turned cold. Stop putting on an act. Qing Ji's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Don't think that I won't kill you. Indeed, you don't dare. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up in ridicule without any hesitation. Do you think I'm like that kind of little white rabbit who doesn't know how to retaliate, even if you bully me? Her fingertips gently brushed against her neck. On her jade-white neck that seemed to be giving off a velvet glow, the red mark from being pinched was really obvious. The corners of the young girl's lips curled into an evil smile, like a deadly and enchanting poppy that slowly bloomed. Miss Qingge, you have to be careful of your own body. Acting, Qingge snorted coldly, totally disregarding Yi Qing Luo's words. But when she spat out these 2 words, his head suddenly felt dizzy. It was as if a gorgeous flower was blooming in front of him. He staggered and stumbled, leaning against the wall before he could barely regain his balance. Qing Ji's face turned pale. What did you do to me? Since Miss Qingge treats me as your love rival, then you should understand your love rival well. Yi Qing Luo smiled warmly as she watched Qingge fall to the ground due to dizziness. Know yourself and know your enemy. Then you will always be victorious. Chapter 49:24. She squatted down and met Qing Ji's gaze. I am most proficient in poison. She casually grabbed a lock of Qing Ji's hair and said, Before you kill me, why don't you think about how to detoxify it? You. Qing Ji's face contorted in pain. You're despicable. Despicable? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as her fingertips brushed past her forehead and gave a harmless smile. I am a vengeful person. Miss Qing Ge wants to kill me. How can I remain indifferent? She suddenly loosened her grip on Qing Ji's hair. The lady fell heavily onto the ground. She gasped in pain. Yi Qing Luo stood up and looked down at Qing Ge. Since Miss Qing Ji's ability is way above the Feng manner, then I believe Miss Qing Ge has a way to detoxify it, even if you don't need me. Then I shall not force Miss Qing Ge to lower your noble head to me. I hope the next time we meet, Miss Qing Ge will have the chance to kill me. Her words fell. Her fingertips moved, and a flame feather fan was gently fanned. The hurricane swept Qing Ge, who was lying on the ground, and pushed her out of the room. Bam! The room door was closed, and Qing Ge was locked outside. Yi Qing Luo remained silent for a moment and quietly went close to the door and looked outside. Qing Ge, who had been thrown to the ground, had a face as pale as a sheet of paper and was slightly twisted and hideous. Her fingers were curled up weakly. She was angry, but she couldn't muster up any strength. Even the profound qi in her body seemed to have disappeared. Like a cripple, lying on the ground, unable to move. Yi Qing Luo stood by the door and stared at Qing Ge. About half a stick of incense later, a black figure silently approached the clear pigeon. Yi Qing Luo had yet to see the appearance of that black shadow clearly. In front of her, there was no one else. Qing Ge was taken away by that black figure. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she wasn't too surprised. She squatted here and stared. He wanted to see exactly what kind of power stood behind Qing Ge. She saw Qing Ji's reaction earlier. Presumably, the power behind her. It was an unspeakable secret. By the time DMO Xian returned, it was already 8 hours later. In his hand was a large basket of fragrant and delicious desserts and dishes. Smelling that smell, Yi Qing Luo knew that this was done by Feng Pe. Have you sent Cici back? Yi Qing Luo held DMO Xian's hand as she rubbed her head against his body. DMO Xian nodded. At the same time, he placed the desserts and dishes on the table. Yi Qing Luo looked up at him. Looks like you've gotten grandfather's approval. From DMO Xian's body, there was a faint fragrance of wine. This meant that he had drunk some wine, and there was only one thing that could make DMO Xian drink. Drink with Grandpa. Moreover, DMO Xian was carrying the snacks and dishes that Granny Feng had personally made. This meant that DMO Xian was instructed by her grandfather to bring this food for her. As expected, DMO Xian nodded again. He placed the wooden chopsticks in Yi Qing Luo's hands and pressed the young lady onto the table. Have a taste. He looked down. The man's vision fell onto the young lady's fair neck. For a moment, the gentleman's eyes seemed to be gathering a storm as his eyes were covered with frost. Your neck. What's the matter? He pressed the young lady's shoulder as he bent over slightly and looked at her neck. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49:25. The young lady's skin was exceptionally fair, so even the slightest trace was extremely clear and visible. Is it Qing Ge? The man's tone was slightly cold. Yi Qing Luo held his big palm and shook her head. It's all right, it doesn't hurt. DMO Xian's eyes were filled with a thin layer of coldness. How dare she lay her hands on you? The man's low and hoarse voice was like a sharp ice needle. Don't worry, she is after all the Overlord's woman. She will not be bullied in vain. Yi Qing Luo cupped his face with both hands. She has already received her punishment. Her long and narrow eyes curved as she playfully blinked. And I can confirm, The power behind her is indeed very mysterious. DMO Xian's emotions had not yet calmed down. Yiqing Luo could only appease him first. After appeasing DMO Xian's anger, she then concisely told DMO Xian about her conversation with Qing Ge. DMO Xian's slender fingers gently stroked the mark on the young lady's neck, his eyes filled with heartache. Yiqing Luo smiled. It really doesn't hurt. She was worried about you, so she didn't dare to be ruthless. There will be no next time. DMO Xian's voice was hoarse. No matter where I go, I will tie you up and bring you along. Yiqing Luo's pink lips pouted. All right. The man slightly lowered his eyelids. His tone was somewhat gloomy. Even under my eyelids, she could hurt you. This is not your fault. You have protected me very well. Yiqing Luo patted the man's back and changed the topic. What did you say to grandfather? Since he can bring me the pastries made by Granny Feng, does that mean grandfather agrees for us to be together? DMO Xian gently pulled her in his arms, his slender and strong arms tightly wrapped around her waist. He asked us, when are we planning to get married? Yiqing Luo quietly and obediently nestled in his arms. Her curved, charming eyes were filled with dependence and tranquility. Grandfather is afraid that someone would snatch away his precious granddaughter. How did you do it? To make him acknowledge you? He even took the initiative to ask when you're going to marry me? DMO Xian's voice was clear. I told him I'm willing to marry into his family. Yiqing Luo. She might have heard it wrongly. Listen to it again. I'm willing to marry into your family. The man unconditionally satisfied her request. Yiqing Luo. Are you crazy? Marry into his family? He was the great Dizun. He actually wanted to marry into her family? Wasn't this too damaging to his demeanor as a big shot? This was a little too much. I'm serious. DMO Xian lowered his eyes and looked into the girl's eyes. His obsidian eyes were filled with sincerity. As long as I can be with you, that's enough. Yiqing Luo's heart was like a colorful firework, exploding with a loud bang. Her porcelain white face was dyed crimson. Her enchanting eyes were filled with deep affection and seemed to contain endless gentleness. She curled her pink lips and stared at the man's obsidian eyes. She said word by word, Xian, I love you. There was only one sentence left in Yiqing Luo's mind. Love him, accompany him, unwavering. Yiqing Luo's arrival. She had directly replaced Qing Ji's position. Now the one accompanying DMO Xian to rummage through the ancient books in the study was Yiqing Luo. But perhaps Qing Ge was poisoned and didn't have the energy to run in front of the both of them. No one sent any meals to the both of them, but DMO Xian was around. As for the food, there was no need to worry about it. Time passed. A day had passed. Qing Ge had yet to appear. Yiqing Luo admired this woman's ability to endure pain. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49:26. She moved her hand. Naturally, she knew how strong the poison was. Qing Ge first felt weak and dizzy, but her consciousness was extremely clear. Following that, she clearly felt a piercing pain in her body, as if it was being pricked by needles. What kind of experience was it to be powerless and in so much pain that she couldn't even move? Just ask Qing Ge and you will know. Anyway, Yiqing Luo expressed that she absolutely couldn't take it. Originally, she thought that Qing Ge would probably endure for 4 to 6 hours before she couldn't wait any longer and ran over to look for her. Even if it wasn't to beg her for the antidote. Wouldn't it be to forcefully ask for the antidote? But Qing Ge seemed to have disappeared. There was no sign of her at all. Yiqing Luo put down the ancient book in her hand, her long and narrow eyes raised as she looked at the man opposite her with a smile. The black-haired man had a head full of black hair that was as thick as the finest ink. It was unbound and scattered over his shoulders like a piece of silk that was spread out, black, shiny, and soft. His slender, jade-like fingers were holding a book. The man quieted down. His entire person looked slightly lazy, but cold and noble. Yiqing Luo's mind suddenly a sentence popped out. A man like Jade, unparalleled in the world. Yiqing Luo's eyes were sparkling. Her gaze was almost glued to him. This burning gaze made the man who was looking at the ancient book slightly raise his eyes and meet her sparkling eyes. In the young lady's eyes, there was a touch of amazement because of his face. The man's peerless face revealed an even more bewitching evil smile. What's the matter? A low and mellow. The ending rose like a feather, floating on the heartstrings. Yiqing Luo blinked her long, curly eyelashes, her charming eyes rippling like a pool of spring water as she smiled and raised her eyebrows. She didn't speak, but the man could tell what she was trying to express at one glance. He put down the book in his hand. Bored? Yiqing Luo nodded her little head. I'll accompany you. DMO Xian pushed the table full of ancient books aside, stretched out his hand and held the young lady's hand. Yiqing Luo shook her little head. No need to go through so much trouble. Her room is just next door. You can slowly look through here. I'll just take a look secretly. To tell the truth, she was still rather curious. What kind of method did Qingge use to endure the poison of the needles? Anyway, it's next door. It was okay to sneak a peek. If he was discovered, he still had the teleportation secret technique. He did not panic at all. DMO Xian also thought of this point and did not stop them. His slender, jade-like fingers pinched the girl's wound. His voice was low and deep as he warned, "Be careful. Don't mess around. Come back after you've seen it. Call me if there's any danger." Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into crescents as she nodded her head like a chicken pecking at rice. "All right, my dear. No problem, my dear. I will obey Xian's orders. Don't say that you know and then forget." The man pinched her face again. "If you're not back in an hour, I'll pick you up." Yiqing Luo was pinched in pain as her little hand hugged his big palm. She stared at him while muttering indistinctly with grievance. "You look like you're worried about your own daughter's father. Who asked you to be so naughty?" DMO Xian poked her forehead. "Don't run around. If you let me know that you've left my sensing range in future, I'll really tie you up." Under his repeated assurance, Yiqing Luo walked out of the study room. Qingge specially placed the study room not far from her own bedroom. She could reach it in just a few steps. Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49-27. Yiqing Luo looked at the distance between the both of them as she clicked her tongue. TSK. Sima Zhao's intentions were known to everyone. But unfortunately, her Xian didn't fall for this trick. Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose as her vision surveyed the surroundings. The Palace of Darkness base was built underground. Other than the Palace of Darkness disciples' side, which was illuminated by the luminous pearls. This place, which was known as the Forbidden Grounds of the base, was in complete darkness. Only Qingge's room projected a faint glow from the luminous pearls. Yiqing Luo thought for a moment. She didn't go over from the main entrance. Instead, her figure flashed as she hid herself in the darkness and silently bypassed the front door and climbed towards the back of the room. According to the design here, the room in front was the bedroom's front hall. The inner hall was the resting place. Yiqing Luo went one round, and through the closed window, she was able to determine the position of Qingge's inner hall. She just leaned over. She saw the luminous pearls on the window projecting a few elongated figures. Yiqing Luo immediately stuck to the wall to prevent her own shadow from being seen by the people inside. "Princess, bear with it." An old voice, which was intentionally suppressed, was heard from inside the room. She could faintly hear Qingge's suppressed moans. Then, after a while, that moan seemed to be unable to be suppressed. It turned into a painful scream. Just a cry. But very quickly it was blocked by something. "Quick, hold the princess down," that old voice anxiously commanded. The shadows in the room swayed as the footsteps were messy. Yiqing Luo listened, and there were about 4 to 5 people inside, and all of them had extraordinary abilities. The room was in a mess. After some time, that painful moans started to slow down. "Grand Warlock, can the poison in Princess's body be cured?" The person who asked was an extremely young-sounding lady. The old voice sounded tense as though he was unwilling and helpless. "I've tried my best. Who is it that dares to poison the princess?" Another man gnashed his teeth in anger. The old man who was addressed as Grand Warlock spoke in a deep tone. "If you want to cure a princess, you can only let princess tell us who the person is, and we will ask for the antidote." "But the princess doesn't want to say anything. I know who it is." A cold male voice rang out. That distance made Yi-Ching Luo jump in shock, because the voice came from right in front of her, very close to her. In other words, she and the man in the room were only separated by a window. What the F***CK? Scared the hell out of me. Yi-Ching Luo's body tensed up, not daring to move recklessly. "Who is Huan Tu?" the woman asked anxiously. The cold man's tone was very cold. "The princess was poisoned, but you're not willing to say who it is. There can only be one person, and that is no. Qing Ji's hoarse voice spat out the words with difficulty. "Princess." When the people in the room heard the clear pigeon's voice, they immediately rushed forward with concern. Qing Gu warned him word by word. "Huan II, do not say anything. I will never bow down to her and ask for the antidote." He could hear it. Qing Gu was in extreme pain as she spoke. "Your Highness, your body cannot be delayed any longer." The Grand Warlock's tone was a little anxious. "If you drag on any longer, the poison will spread throughout your entire body. I'm afraid, your future days will be ruined." Qing Gu didn't say a word. The woman persuaded. "Your Highness, are you willing to spend your days in this way? Don't you want the position of Mirage King anymore?" "Trash, 7th young mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love." "Trash, 7th young mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 49:28. Qing Ji's breathing stagnated for a moment as she spoke in a hoarse voice. "How can this poison hurt me?" "Your Highness, this poison." The Grand Shaman was a little ashamed. "I've only read about this kind of poison in the ancient books, but I have no idea what kind of poison it is and how to cure it." "Useless," Qing Gu reprimanded him sternly. "You can't even cure a useless poison. What qualifications do you have to be the Grand Shaman?" Qing Ji's words were full of anger, not leaving any face for the Grand Shaman. The Grand Shaman's face turned red, embarrassed and angry, and he didn't say a word. The woman quickly broke the deadlock and comforted her gently. "Your Highness, you can't be angry now. Tell us, who is the person who poisoned you?" "I won't beg her, I can snatch it." The woman was Qing Ji's personal maid, Huan Luo, and she could tell that Qing Gu was feeling awkward at this moment. "Snatch." Qing Gu snorted lightly. Her tone was full of ridicule. "Do you think you can snatch it?" She was the one who suffered. Hadn't she thought of forcing Feng Qing Luo to take out the antidote? But that slut had the Overlord by her side, with the protection of the Overlord. No one could get close to that slut. What's more, it would alert the enemy. If the Overlord found out the existence of the power behind her, the Overlord would definitely investigate thoroughly. Isn't the person who poisoned the princess a useless person? Huan Luo was puzzled. Useless person? In front of the window, the man who was addressed as Huan San spoke indifferently. "Which useless person do you think can make the princess suffer?" "Huan Luo." It seemed like there wasn't anyone. Their clan's princess was one of the strongest among them. She was the hope of their clan. To be able to make the princess become like this. How could he be a useless person? "Huan San," Qing Gu shouted angrily. Huan San turned his head away and didn't say a word. He turned his head. Huan San's gaze was directed towards the direction of the window. Under the bright light of the luminous pearl, he could vaguely see a black shadow moving outside the window. Huan San's expression froze as he shouted, "Who is it?" He suddenly made a move, slapped open the tightly shut window, and flew out. "Huan 3, what's wrong?" Who's outside?" The expressions of the people in the room changed greatly when they saw Huan 3's movements. They all cautiously rushed out. Outside the window, under the illumination of the luminous pearl, there was no sound. It was a deathly stillness. There was no one around. There was no sign of life, either. They chased after him. He looked around. Huan 3, didn't you find someone? Why don't I see anyone? Someone asked. Huan 3's expression was cold. He furrowed his brows and looked around suspiciously. Just now, I clearly saw. If there's someone, how can he escape our senses? Aren't you being too sensitive? Huan 3 pursed his lips and carefully sensed for a moment before saying, perhaps. They slowly returned to the house. Right then, standing on top of the wall, Yiqing Luo, who was using the lush trees as cover, was shivering. She didn't expect that person called Huan 3 to be so sensitive. He immediately discovered her existence. Luckily, she had the secret art of teleportation. She teleported to the top of the wall in minutes. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49-29. She retracted all of her aura. Even her breathing was extremely careful. Those people didn't discover her. She who was hiding in the dark. She even saw those people's looks clearly. That person called Huan San was dressed in black, his hair combed neatly, and there was a long sword by his waist. From his attire, he should be a secret guard. Behind him was a man and a woman, also dressed in secret guard attire, and a black-robed great sorcerer with white beard and white brows. But the most eye-catching thing was, it was the huge totem embroidered on those people's clothes. Like a bolt of lightning, or like a splash of ink, the edges outlined a dreamlike ripple. That totem was very unfamiliar. Yiqing Luo had never seen it before. She memorized the shape of the totem in her mind. Later on, she would copy it for Xian to check on it. Through the broken window, the few people in the house had already disappeared without a sound, leaving behind Qingge, who was lying on the bed with a face full of pain, her body twisting slightly. Yiqing Luo originally wanted to see if this Qingge had really found the way to cure the poison. She was so stubborn that she didn't come to beg her. Now she saw it. Yiqing Luo had no interest to stay any longer. She retracted her gaze and flipped down from the wall. The moment her feet landed on the ground, her pupils constricted and the expression on her face darkened a little. Her feet moved and her petite figure retreated swiftly in the darkness. Following that, she turned her head and looked behind her alertly. In the darkness, a tall figure was faintly discernible. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened slightly. There was indeed someone. She had been discovered. She squinted her eyes slightly as her vision wandered around. Calculating the time, she left the other party's sight. But that figure's sleeves were like floating clouds, reflecting into her eyes. Yiqing Luo's vigilant expression instantly disappeared. She frowned and asked uncertainly, "Zhu Wu Exen?" Yiqing Luo. In the darkness, the man's cold and slightly hoarse voice rang. Indeed, it was Zhu Wu Xian's voice. Not knowing if it was because she recognized Zhu Wu Xian or for some other reason, she poked at Zhu Wu Xian's sore point. The man's usual cold voice carried a hint of smile. "What are you doing here?" Yiqing Luo didn't answer his question, but instead asked back, "Why are you here?" "I saw that you were here, so I came over," Zhu Wuxin replied indifferently. His gaze fell on the wall. "This is the direction of Qing Dove's room." Yiqing Luo replied unhurriedly, "Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle. I'm here to take a look. This woman who has the guts to covet my man, what's so worthy for me to guard against?" Zhu Wu Xian walked towards Yiqing Luo from the darkness. His eyes were especially black in the darkness. As though towards Yiqing Luo's reply, there wasn't much feeling or reaction. Yiqing Luo's gaze looked downwards at his chest. "Your injury. Worried about me?" Before she could ask, Zhu Wuxin had already interrupted her. The man's tone was somewhat joyful. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly. Her gaze was calm. "Your injury, after all, was inflicted by me." The joy in Zhu Wu Xian's eyes didn't diminish. "For you to ask this, it means that you're still concerned about me." Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, as she couldn't be bothered to tell Zhu Wu Xian clearly that she wasn't concerned about him. Anyway, Zhu Wu Exine wouldn't listen at all. She directly turned around, preparing to leave. Don't you want to know Qing Dove's identity? Behind her, the man's tone was indifferent, but the words he said made Yi Qing Luo's footsteps suddenly halted. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 4930. Zhu Wu Exine knew Qing Ji's real identity. He would say this out loud. This meant that he also knew. She already knew that there was a hidden powerhouse behind Qing Ge. Yi Qing Luo's eyes sunk as she turned back to look at Zhu Wu Exine's eyes. Since when have you been following me? Chu Wuxin must have seen what had happened in the clear pigeon house, so he was watching her from the dark. She secretly peeked at Qing Ge, but she didn't know that she was also being secretly peeked at. Indeed, she would have to pay for what she did sooner or later. Shivering, it scared her to death. Not long ago, Zhu Wu Exine said calmly, "That's not important. What's important is, if you want to know, I can tell you." Yi Qing Luo didn't move, and there wasn't much change in her expression. No need. She didn't want to accept any goodwill from Zhu Wu Exine or any help from him. Otherwise, it would become more and more troublesome. Anyway, towards the mysterious powerhouse behind Qing Ge. She wasn't in a hurry to find out. Anyway, even if she knew what kind of powerhouse the mysterious powerhouse was, she couldn't do anything now. The longer it drags on, the more troublesome it will be. Zhu Wu Exine's eyes dimmed for a moment, but he continued. Moreover, even if you want to investigate, you won't be able to find anything. With Xian around, there's nothing I can't find. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled as her tone was obviously distant. Master Zhu, I don't need your help. Thank you for your kind intentions. She said that, and without any hesitation, she stepped into the darkness. She didn't even turn her head back. Heh! A strange light ridicule sounded in the darkness. A figure walked out from the darkness. That figure stood behind Zhu Wu Exine as his voice was sinister and sinister. Pavilion Master, have you given up? Zhu Wu Exine stood at his original spot, not saying a word. The black shadow chuckled again, a chilling chuckle. No matter how much you try to express your feelings, she doesn't love you, and she won't be willing to accept any of your feelings. Pavilion Master, don't tell me you still don't understand. Because she doesn't love you, she can hurt you unscrupulously, trample on your heart, treat you like a dreadful beast, and avoid you like a fly. Your nearness to her is a great annoyance. The black shadow's words were like needles stabbing into the most painful part of Zhu Wuxin's heart. Even Zhu Wu Exine's frosty expression changed slightly. The black shadow slowly walked closer to Zhu Wu Exine and said in a low, bewitching voice, Pavilion Master, previously about the deal I discussed with you. You can carefully consider it, bang. Zhu Wuxin waved his hand. Rays of profound light shot out. The shadow in front of him was split into two halves. However, there was no blood. Thick yin qi spread out from the black figure. The voice of the black shadow that had been split into two continued, Pavilion Master, I'll wait for you to change your mind. His words fell. The two halves of the body turned into dust and dissipated into the air like ashes. When Yi Qing Luo returned to the study room, DMO Xian was still sitting in front of the table flipping through the ancient books. Hearing the sound, he raised his head and looked at the young lady. His obsidian black eyes were filled with gentleness and pampering. Have you played enough? Almost went overboard. Yi Qing Luo patted her chest exaggeratedly as she leaned towards DMO Xian. Guess what I saw at Qing Ji's side? The young lady's mysterious look made DMO Xian's eyes smile. He stretched out his hand and embraced the young lady. His smile instantly congealed on his face. His expression also sunk slightly. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with my love. Chapter 4931. His hand pressed on the young lady's shoulder as his deep, inky eyes squinted slightly. Who did you meet earlier? Yi Qing Luo was about to tell DMO Xian about what she heard outside Qing Ji's room. Being questioned by DMO Xian, she instantly swallowed back the words that were about to come out. The man's gaze was deep like a deep pool, unable to see the bottom. Who did she meet? Who could she meet? She just went to Qing Ji's place for a stroll, and then, Yi Qing Luo's eyes widened. Zhu Wuexin? It's indeed him. D.M.O. Xian's eyes flashed past a sliver of displeasure. Yi Qing Luo lowered her head as she looked at herself. What's the matter? How would Xian know that she and Zhu Wuexin had just met? D.M.O. Xian didn't answer her question as he stretched out his hand and pulled her into his embrace. His chin was pressed against her head. The man's mellow voice floated down. I really need to tie you to my side. Yi Qing Luo. Wait a minute. What on earth had happened? What did she do? D.M.O. Xian had no intention to answer this question. Yi Qing Luo could roughly guess. Just now, Zhu Wuxin must have done something to her body or purposely stained her body with his scent, which was why D.M.O. Xian's expression suddenly changed. Yi Qing Luo allowed D.M.O. Xian to disperse the remaining Zhu Wuexin's scent on her body like a childish boy. She then opened her mouth. Sir, are you satisfied? If you're not satisfied, what are you going to do? D.M.O. Xian lowered his eyes as his deep gaze congealed on her. Yi Qing Luo's long eyelashes fluttered as she blinked. Following that, she gave a sweet and innocent smile. If you're not satisfied, there's nothing I can do. The core values of socialism don't allow it, so you can only make do and be satisfied. D.M.O. Xian. What fucking make do and be satisfied? All right, he may do. I was outside Qing Ji's room when I saw those forces behind her. Yi Qing Luo told D.M.O. Xian everything she heard at Qing Ji's place. After that, she pushed D.M.O. Xian's arm away and walked straight to another neat desk. She spread out a piece of paper in front of her and picked up a pen beside it. Following the shape in her mind, she copied the totem she saw on the clothes of the secret guards and the Grand Shaman, stroke by stroke. After about the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, Yi Qing Luo put down her pen. Look, have you seen this force before? The totem which Yi Qing Luo had drawn was exactly the same as the totem which Yi Qing Luo had seen. D.M.O. Xian scrutinized it for a moment and frowned slightly. No, this totem was very unfamiliar. Ask the Imperial Palace's side to investigate secretly. If they're able to find out that powerhouse, there's a possibility that we can make use of it. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. The goal of the Palace of Darkness. It was for the tomb of the Divine Emperor. The reason why Qing Gu was in the gloomy palace. It was also for the tomb of the Divine Emperor. In the end, the two forces would stand on opposite sides. If he could make good use of it, there might be a chance to get rid of these two forces. That's right, Xian, Zhu Wuexin said. He knows the powerhouse behind Qing Gu. What kind of powerhouse is it? Yi Qing Luo suddenly recalled what Zhu Wuexin said earlier. D.M.O. Xian's fingertips moved as he locked her chin. What he knows is his own matter. You're not allowed to ask him. I just know that a big vinegar jar like you would get jealous. Yi Qing Luo pushed his hand away, so I directly rejected him. Chapter 49:32. D.M.O. Xian's thin lips curled into a smile as he rubbed her head. Be good. Yi Qing Luo. Be good your head. You're such a bad vinegar jar. But to ridicule. Yi Qing Luo didn't say it out. She adjusted her tone and said, even you haven't seen this powerhouse's totem, but Zhu Wuexin would know. There's a possibility that he might be related to that powerhouse. Zhu Wuexin, this person. In her past memories, she only remembered that Zhu Wuexin's identity was very mysterious. Later on in Death God Castle, when she met Zhu Wuexin, she only thought that Zhu Wuexin was just Death God Castle's castle lord. But later on she discovered Zhu Wuexin was not only Death God Castle's castle lord, and the so-called Death God Castle was not as simple as what it looked on the surface. Otherwise, the ghost robbers would not have been imprisoned in Death God Castle for so many years. Later on, when they arrived at the upper realm, Zhu Wuexin transformed into the Red Clear Pavilion's Pavilion Lord. The Red Clear Pavilion that was famous in the upper realm and even in the God realm. and he was able to collaborate with the people behind the Nether Palace, and casually cut off the collaboration. And he wasn't afraid of the people behind the Nether Palace taking revenge. Zhu Wuxian's identity, thinking in this way, wasn't that simple. Yiqing Luo's eyes deepened. Don't think about him. DMO Xian cupped her face as his tone became heavier, as though he was unhappy. I will investigate. There's no need to ask him. Yes, I will, my lord husband. A vinegar jar was indeed a vinegar jar. This totem. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo felt a scorching sensation on her wrist. Following that, she saw a light figure floating out. That figure was faintly discernible in the darkness. It was in a translucent state. Old man Song, what's the matter? Yiqing Luo immediately looked at that floating figure. You've seen this totem before? Old man Song walked several rounds around the totem, which Yiqing Luo had drawn on the study table. I seem to have seen it somewhere. Old man Song recalled with difficulty. But it's been too long. I really can't recall where I've seen it before. Vaguely, he felt that this totem looked familiar. However, if he thought about it carefully, he would be stuck. Yes, before you became the guardian spirit of the Azure Dew bracelet. Did you see it? Yiqing Luo probed. After Old Man Song became the guardian spirit of the Azure Dew bracelet, he had slumbered for over 10,000 years. If he had seen it before, this also meant that the history of this force was comparable to the Feng family. That was a force even more ancient than the so-called Palace of Darkness. Old Man Song nodded his head without hesitation. Yes, I only have a vague impression of it, but I'm not too sure if this totem is the same as the one in my memory. Now, I can only wait for the Imperial Palace to investigate and see if there is any news. With the clue provided by Old Man Song, a lot of time was saved. Old Man Song wanted to say something. He suddenly looked out the door. The smoke-like figure immediately followed Yiqing Luo's wrist and drilled into the Azure Dew bracelet. Someone? Yiqing Luo's gaze swept towards the room door. His gaze fell on the table again, on the paper with the totem drawn on it. If this totem was discovered by Clear Pigeon, that would be alerting the enemy. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk. Her slender white hand immediately grabbed that piece of paper. At the same time, the study room's door was suddenly opened by someone. A white robe fluttered. Incomparably frail woman, supported by a maid, stood at the door. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Everyone please collect. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Hit me. Chapter 49:33. Qing Ji's face was as pale as a piece of paper, with beads of cold sweat on her forehead. The maid beside her was the lady named Huan Luo. Overlord. Qing Ji's weak voice was soft and powerless. That look coupled with that voice. It was a pitiful painting of a beauty. After all, Qing Ge had always been elegant and dignified. Suddenly becoming so weak, it made one feel sorry for her. The contrast was enough to stir one's heart. But Qing Ji's bellyful of words were stuck in her throat. When Wan's frail face froze in that instant. The scene in the study room. All her plans had been disrupted. Inside the study room, the young lady in a fiery red dress had one arm around the man's neck. The other hand was placed on DMO Xian's chest. Their posture was intimate. At this moment, both of them simultaneously turned their gazes toward the door. Tacit understanding. Warmth. Qing Ji's body was on the verge of collapse. The sharp pain in her body that felt like it was being pierced by needles was even more unbearable. And Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief when she lowered her eyes. Just at the moment when the door was pushed open, she had coincidentally stuffed that piece of paper with the totem into DMO Xian's arms. Scared the hell out of her. She was almost discovered by Qing Ge. Luckily, she was quick-witted and had quick reflexes. But she just wanted to hide that piece of paper. It seemed that Qing Ge had misunderstood. Yiqing Luo tilted her head. Her eyes were filled with a faint smile. Miss Qing Ge, what's the matter? Qing Ji's gaze was stuck on DMO Xian. Suddenly, she heard Yiqing Luo's voice. Her gaze tightened as her sharp gaze stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Feng Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes and pretended to be scared as she buried her head into Mo Xian's arms. Why did you suddenly shout at me? Don't you know the reason why I am here? Qing Ji's voice was slightly sharp. Her jade fingers clasped Huan Luo's arm tightly as she gritted her teeth. She hated it the most. It was Feng Qing Luo who deliberately pretended to be innocent and pure. Pretentious. Simply disgusting. Feng Qing Luo, that slut, used this kind of pretentious look to deceive the Overlord. Yi Qing Luo stuck her head out and dragged out the last syllable before blinking her eyes innocently. I don't know, so why did Miss Qingge come looking for me? You. Qingge gasped and glared at Yi Qing Luo. Hand over the antidote. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head, her long and narrow eyes raised slightly. What antidote? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Qingge was so infuriated that she almost died on the spot. She turned to look at Mo Xian. Overlord, I didn't hesitate to betray his lordship to work for you. Don't tell me you're going to allow Miss Feng to treat me like this. At the end of her sentence, her voice trembled. It was as if he had suffered a great grievance. Mo Xian had yet to speak. Yi Qing Luo moved and stood in front of Mo Xian, raising her brows at Qingge. What did I do to you? You poisoned me. Qingge spat out word by word through gritted teeth. After she finished her words, her entire body trembled slightly, as if the pain was spreading throughout her body. Huan Luo's arm was scratched till there were red marks. She looked at Yi Qing Luo with heartache. Miss Feng, quickly hand over the antidote. Ever since you came here, my miss has never treated you unfairly. Don't you have a conscience for treating her like this? Yi Qing Luo. Oh no, but her mouth was very direct, denying thrice. I'm not, don't talk nonsense. Seventh miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49:34. She put on a serious look. You said I poisoned you. Show me the evidence. Anyway, there was no evidence. On what basis did she say that she was the one who poisoned her? Qingge had not expected Yi Qing Luo to deny everything. She was so angry that she almost died on the spot as she gritted her teeth and stared at Yi Qing Luo. Feng Qing Luo, you. How could you be so shameless? Yi Qing Luo's face sunk slightly as her half-squinted eyes congealed a cold arc. Miss Qingge, if you don't have any evidence, don't spout nonsense. Her pink lips curled slightly as the chill in her eyes deepened. What evidence do you have to prove that I have poisoned you? If you can't show me the evidence, can I assume that Miss Qingge is trying to attract my man's attention and intentionally slandered me? Not only did she refute in a serious manner, she even put on a high hat on Qing Ji's head. Qing Ji's face contorted slightly as she looked at Yi Qing Luo's serious face of denying and intentionally making her hate. Her eyes turned red. A slut is a slut. She actually played this trick in front of the Overlord, all kinds of innocent and pure. But when facing her alone, she knew how to stretch out her sharp claws. This slut relied on this kind of pretentious method to cheat the Overlord's trust. Miss Feng. Huan Luo had not expected this eldest miss of the Feng family to be so difficult to deal with. She looked at the princess, who was trembling in pain, and pursed her lips tightly. What you want is Miss taking the initiative to ask you for the antidote. Now that Miss is here, what else do you want to do? Miss Feng, for the sake of the Overlord, if you hand over the antidote now, this matter, we will let it go. Huan Luo's tone was neither servile nor overbearing. Not much emotion could be heard from it, but every word and sentence was filled with an overbearing boldness. Yi Qing Luo covered her mouth as she laughed softly. Her melodious laughter was as melodious as a silver bell. You guys are really funny. How do you put it? It seems like I'm the one who forced Miss Qingge to look for me. What's in it for me if she comes looking for me? Huan Luo took a look at Mo Xian and saw that from the start till the end, the man had not revealed any trace of emotion. She gritted her teeth and said, Because you deliberately wanted my young miss to lower her head to you, please. I can satisfy your vanity in front of His Majesty. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, she giggled. Then, as she lowered her head, "Are you begging me?" Huan Luo was speechless. Lower my head? How could he lower his head? Qing Gu was a high and mighty princess. How could he lower his head to a slut? Not to mention, begging her. Yi Qing Luo seemed to have seen through Huan Luo's thoughts from her expression. She tilted her head and smiled sweetly like a flower. "So, now you admit that you're slandering me?" Huan Luo still wanted to say something, but Qing Gu grabbed his wrist. Qing Ji's face was pale, and the cold sweat on her forehead slid down her face. Her breathing was heavy as she gasped for breath. She said word by word, "To put it bluntly, you just want to see me make a fool of myself." After she finished her sentence, she gasped even harder, as though it was extremely strenuous. She shut her eyes tightly and opened them again. "No matter what we do, you can't possibly. Give me the antidote." Yi Qing Luo's slender, jade-like fingers held her chin. Her long and thick lashes fluttered like butterfly wings. Her smile was still that innocent and harmless. "Aya, you've seen through me." Chapter 49:35. The young lady's fingers moved slightly and pressed against her pink lips as she blinked her eyes exaggeratedly. "You finally admit it." Qing Ji's eyes widened as she stared at Yi Qing Luo. "You admit that you did it on purpose." Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as her silky black hair slid down her porcelain-like delicate little face, making her look even more mischievous and adorable. "What can you do even if I admit it?" Her fingertips caressed her chin as she smiled innocently. "So, you want to lower your head to me and beg me to give you the antidote?" That obvious mocking tone sounded as if she was teasing a pet. Qing Ji's face, which was already pale from the pain, became even paler. She widened her eyes as anger surged in her eyes. "Don't even think about it." "Oh." Yi Qing Luo shrugged nonchalantly. "Then you can turn around and leave now. This is my place." Qing Gu was so angry that her face started to turn red again. The redness on her pale face gave her a strange feeling. Qing Gu felt a fishy sweetness in her throat, as if something was about to gush out. She forcefully suppressed it and turned her gaze to the emotion. "Overlord, you heard it. Miss Feng admitted that she was the one who poisoned me. Now, she should be able to see the true face of this seemingly harmless slut." "Overlord, I am wholeheartedly only for you." Qing Gu continued. "I tried my best to help you, to achieve your wish. But she treated me like this." DMO, Xian's deep inky eyes glanced at Qing Gu indifferently. His emotions were indifferent, and she couldn't tell what he was thinking. But the man's large palm was still wrapped around the young lady's waist, which gave Qing Gu a bad premonition. "It doesn't matter whether she is the one who poisoned me or not." The man's mellow voice was deep and husky. "What's important is what she wants." The man's beautiful lips curled into an ambiguous arc. "If she wants to kill someone, I will hand over the knife." Qing Ji's pupils suddenly contracted. Leaning on Huan Luo, she couldn't help but stagger a few times. The meaning of the Overlord's words was obvious. Whether this poison was from Feng Qing Luo or not, he would always stand on Feng Qing Luo's side. "Overlord." Qing Ji's voice was a little hoarse, as if she was about to cry. "How could you do this, heartless?" Yes, this man, other than Feng Qing Luo. It was so heartless that it was as if he had no feelings at all. No matter what she said, no matter how pitiful she was, he didn't even flinch. If she wants to kill someone, I'll give her the knife. She killed someone, and he gave her a knife. The high and mighty Di Zun, who was like a god. He was cold to others and had an unapproachable temperament. Actually, he was not cold at all. However, all the gentleness was given to Feng Qing Luo alone. There seemed to be a whirlpool in Qing Ji's eyes, churning continuously. Her thoughts were buried under the boundless whirlpool. Sooner or later, she would take Di Zun's gentleness. Sooner or later, she would get the Overlord, and let Feng Qing Luo see with her own eyes how the Overlord would give all his gentleness to her. A flame of excitement flashed across Qing Dove's eyes. She clasped Huan Luo's arm tightly, gritted her teeth, and spat out a word with difficulty. Go! To make her lower her head to Feng Qing Luo. Absolutely impossible, especially after being teased by Feng Qing Luo. TSK, TSK. You really have a backbone. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue and praised insincerely. Chapter 49:36. The pigeon paused for a moment. It looked like he stumbled. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose slightly as she smiled and snuggled into Mo Xian's arms as she pretended to speak indifferently. Backbone or life? Which one is more important? Xian, what do you think? The man slightly lowered his eyes as deep as the sea, reflecting the young girl's sweet smile. His eyes darkened. His beautiful lips were thin, and his voice was elegant and mellow. You are more important. Sudden words of love. It made Yi Qing Luo's maiden heart restless. Her little hand clutched onto his lapel as she raised her head to glare at Mo Xian coquettishly. I'm being serious here. What I said was very serious. Mo Xian's eyes were smiling. Critical strike. My health bar is empty. Her Xian was becoming more and more flirtatious. Don't you know that this is a critical period? Remember the core values of socialism. How could he say such sweet nothings to her? Be careful not to be locked in a small black room. Yi Qing Luo clutched her thumping heart as she couldn't hold it in any longer. Right then, Qing Gu, who had yet to leave, heard the man's gentle and doting voice, saying words of love that she had never heard before. His body felt like it was being pricked by needles. The stab became even more painful. She clutched her clothes tightly. His qi and blood surged. In the next instant, his vision turned black. Then he lost consciousness. Miss, young miss, Huan Luo shouted in panic. The forbidden area of the Palace of Darkness was always quiet. Huan Luo's voice could be heard. This attracted the attention of the disciples of the Palace of Darkness. Very quickly, they rushed over in an orderly manner. Miss Huan Luo, what happened? The leader of the secluded Darkness Palace disciples shouted from outside the forbidden area. Huan Luo took a look at Mo Xian and Yi Qing Luo and looked at the unconscious Qing Gu in her arms. She bit her lips and carried Qing Gu out of the study room in quick steps. Yi Qing Luo and Mo Xian exchanged glances. The girl's pink lips curled up slightly. Looks like we can't stay here anymore. It's all right. Mo Xian wrapped his arm around her slender waist. I've already found what I wanted to find. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes. Since you found it, why are you still staying here for? Because you're naughty. The man's voice was light, but it was full of affection. Yi Qing Luo. All right, she couldn't refute. It turned out that he was interested in the power behind Qing Gu because of her. So he stayed and let her satisfy her curiosity before seeing if she wanted to leave the base of the Palace of Darkness. Yi Qing Luo's arms circled around his neck. Then shall we leave now? If you don't want to leave, you can stay. He had a way to let her stay in this base safe and sound. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head and looked past the door of the study, at the door of Qing Ji's room, not too far away. If I were to leave, there's a possibility that she might die from the clear pigeon poison outbreak. Would the power behind her let her off so easily? It felt like there would be a lot of trouble in the future. It's all right. Mo Xian bowed slightly, his thin lips spitting out words. I can protect you. Don't worry about anything. As long as you wish for it, I will definitely protect you. Yi Qing Luo. Critical hit. Blood gauge. 99999. Outside the courtyard, those orderly footsteps had already entered the forbidden grounds. Apparently, they had received Huan Luo's orders. Huan Luo was planning to expose their whereabouts. Yi Qing Luo passed her body weight over to Mo Xian. Before we leave, I still want to go to a place. Seventh young miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh young miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49:37. The decorations were exquisite and dazzling, with numerous toys and food, just like a children's paradise in the room. The little one was staring blankly at the candied haws in her hands. That delicate and adorable little face did not have the innocence and joy of a child, but was filled with melancholy. Her delicate brows were tightly knitted into a bundle. After staring at the candied haws for a long time, the little one suddenly threw the candied haws onto the ground. A liar who deceived this princess, just a scoundrel. This princess needs to worry about him. After roaring this sentence, the little one stepped hard on the candied haws again. This princess will not forgive a liar who deceives me. But after a few steps, the little one seemed to have lost all her strength as she stopped her stomping action and sat on the ground weakly. Her bright and beautiful big eyes stared at the candied haws which had been stepped on. Suddenly, she started to cry. This cry had just started. She heard a clear and melodious voice ringing in the room. How much does Princess Ling Long miss Cece? So much that you're crying. The little one's cries stopped abruptly as her beautiful eyes widened and looked around vigilantly. Who's there? Inside the room, two figures appeared silently. A fiery lady, dressed in a fluttering red robe. A black-haired man in black robe was like a god. Ling Long's exquisite little face turned slightly pale as she stood up abruptly and took a step back. You! Who are you? What are you trying to do by barging into this princess's room? Her face was filled with vigilance. How did you find out about this princess's room? Are you trying to kidnap this princess as a hostage? Yi Qing Luo. This little one knew quite a lot. Her pink lips parted as she released Mo Xin's waist and walked slowly towards the little one. Then Princess Ling Long. Do you want to be my hostage? Ling Long's little face turned pale again. Then she turned around and wanted to run. But the little one who had stepped on the candied haws earlier, he turned his head and ran. Bam! Her feet stuck to the ground and she fell onto the ground. The elegant and classy Princess Ling Long fell flat on her face. The scene was a little awkward. The little man's face was red as he struggled to get up from the ground. However, the stickiness under her feet made it impossible for her to stand firmly. He cut a sorry figure. Ling Long struggled, and her eyes immediately turned red. He simply sat on the ground and refused to move. At this moment, a slender and fair little hand stretched out in front of her. Ling Long was startled. She looked up and saw a coquettish face. At this moment, the face was looking at her with a gentle and harmless smile. For some strange reason, Ling Long extended her hand into that fair hand. The warm touch caused the little girl's heart to tremble for a moment, until he was pulled up by someone. Ling Long was still in a daze. Princess Ling Long, can I ask you a question? Yi Qing Luo didn't let go of her hand, but slowly squatted down and looked at the little girl at the same level. Ling Long was still a little confused. What? You should have heard that there's news from the Forbidden Land. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as her brows were picturesque. If Feng she's really caught, how do you want to deal with her? The young lady's voice was very gentle. Like a clear spring, it flowed past Ling Long's heart, soothing the restlessness in her heart. How to deal with Feng Shi? Ling Long's eyelids drooped down slightly as her voice sounded a little tense. He lied to me and made use of me. If he is caught, I want him to taste the most severe punishment from my secluded palace. Chapter 49:38. The little girl's every word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. But in the end, all her imposing manner was extinguished at this moment. She drooped her head as her eyes turned red, and her crisp childish voice sounded choked. I originally thought so, but... She waved Yi Qing Luo's hand away as she hugged her head with both hands. But I don't want him to be caught. Ling Long ultimately couldn't resist the true desire in her heart. She should have hated Feng Shi. But the moment she thought of Feng Shi's smiling face and the way Feng she called her Ling Long, she couldn't raise any bit of hatred. That was her first friend. The first one, whom she sincerely wanted to befriend. Even if he lied to her, she didn't want anything to happen to him. Ling Long's reply made Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened. Indeed, it was right for her to make this trip. She didn't misjudge Ling Long. Yi Qing Luo took out a handkerchief and gently wiped away the tears on Ling Long's face as she spoke in a gentle voice. Actually, when Feng Shi left here, she left something for you. Ling Long blinked her eyes. What is it? Yi Qing Luo stuffed the handkerchief into her palm and pointed to her bed. Ling Long was slightly stunned as joy flashed past her eyes, but there was some uncertainty and hesitation. Yi Qing Luo smiled and nodded at her. Ling Long remained silent for a moment as she clenched the handkerchief in her hand tightly and walked towards the direction of the bed step by step. Under the pillow, she took out a piece of letter. Ling Long took a look at Yi Qing Luo as she opened the letter bit by bit. She read every word on the letter word by word. Yi Qing Luo didn't rush her. After about the time it took for half a stick of incense to burn, Ling Long then folded the letter neatly and raised her head to look at Yi Qing Luo. You are Shao Qi. It wasn't a question, but an affirmation. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to hide. Did you see through it, or was it said in the letter? Earlier, when you stretched out your hand to me, I vaguely guessed it. Ling Long pursed her lips. So, you pretended to be Shao Qi to bring Cece away? Yes. Yi Qing Luo admitted straightforwardly. Secluded Palace's motive for capturing Cece isn't simple. It's too dangerous for Cece to stay here. I understand. Ling Long looked at the letter in her hand. Knowing that he isn't lying to me or using me is enough. Yi Qing Luo smiled. I think Cece also doesn't want you to misunderstand her, so I made this trip. She paused for a moment before continuing. Cece is very safe now. You don't have to worry. Cece has already left this place, right? Ling Long's distinct black and white beautiful eyes looked at Yi Qing Luo without blinking, as though she had made some sort of decision. Yi Qing Luo nodded her head. Ling Long clenched her tiny fist tightly. Then, he stuffed the letter into his pocket. He raised his hands and stretched it out in front of Yi Qing Luo. Shao Qi, catch me. Yi Qing Luo. What kind of operation was this? I'll be your hostage. Bring me out of this dark place. Ling Long stuffed her hands into Yi Qing Luo's hands. Bring me to look for Cece. Hostage? Your Highness, are you serious? Wasn't this train of thought a little too fast? I'm the most pampered princess of Secluded Palace. As long as I'm in your hands, they absolutely won't dare to touch me. You can use me as a hostage and leave this place. Chapter 49-39. Little Princess started to analyze the reason for Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo. This child was rather smart. She actually volunteered to be a hostage. But she didn't need a hostage to leave this place. But looking at Ling Long's determined eyes, she looked as though she was volunteering to be a hostage. Yi Qing Luo really couldn't bear to reject her. She turned her head and looked at Dmo Xian. The black-haired man's thin lips curled slightly as his gaze was filled with love, as though he was saying, you decide. Then, take the hostage away. Ling Long volunteered. Moreover, Feng, she should also want to see Ling Long. A child's friendship was very pure. It wouldn't be mixed with too many interests and complicated relationships. Yi Qing Luo didn't wish for Feng she to lose a friend like this. And she indeed had some selfish motives. Over at the Secluded Palace, they respected and protected Ling Long. It was enough to prove that the mastermind behind the Secluded Palace valued Ling Long. If Ling Long was in her hands, at least she would have some advantage. If the mastermind behind the Secluded Palace wanted to snatch Ling Long back, they would definitely give themselves away. The two of them brought along a child as they silently headed towards the exit. The Secluded Palace's base exit was only the Jiang family's aristocrats' dungeon. It was heavily guarded by the Secluded Palace's disciples. Dmo Xian could come and go as he pleased. Yi Qing Luo was still considering if she could use the blink movement secret art to leave silently. Then, her arm was grabbed by someone, and her wrist was placed across a fair and slender neck. Ling Long shouted, I'm a hostage. None of you are allowed to move. Yi Qing Luo. This lass, was she really not a spy sent by the enemy? Ling Long's roar. Instantly, the Secluded Palace's disciples who were guarding the entrance stared over in alarm. Yi Qing Luo. She could only hold Ling Long as she walked out from the dark. Ling Long was still trying her best to display her acting. None of you are allowed to move. Once you move, she will kill me. If I die, all of you will be buried with me. I am father's most beloved princess. If anything happens to me, all of you will die. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to ridicule. Most importantly, the Nether Palace disciples actually believed it. Secluded Palace's disciples were all filled with vigilance and worry as they stared at Yiqing Luo in panic. Miss Feng, quickly let go of our princess. How much did his lord value Princess Linglong? They knew better than anyone else. Usually, if Princess Linglong were to knock herself against the wall, she would be punished with the lives of a large group of servants. If they allowed Princess Linglong to become a hostage and even get injured, just the thought of the consequences sent shivers down his spine. The secluded Darkness Palace disciples were so frightened that they didn't dare to move. Yiqing Luo. This was probably the common saying, being overly concerned would cause confusion. She didn't have any room to play. The man in her arms tugged at her sleeves and whispered, "Let's go now." Yiqing Luo locked Linglong's neck as she slowly walked out of the underground prison's entrance. Mr. and Mrs. Jiang also arrived with hundreds of secret guards. It was a pincer attack, but because Linglong was held hostage in Yiqing Luo's hands. From time to time, he would even shout and scream. Yiqing Luo had a smooth journey as she brought Linglong and left the Jiang family's aristocratic residence. In the dark, Yiqing Luo put Linglong down. The secluded palace's disciples and Jiang aristocrats' secret guards were searching everywhere. Linglong delightfully curled her cherry lips. "I'm still the smarter one." Chapter 4940. Yiqing Luo leaned against the wall and sighed softly. "You're smart, but have you ever thought about my identity as Feng family's Missy? Will they let us off?" Linglong's complacent smile froze bit by bit. She lowered her head. "Did I get into trouble?" "Yes, so. Remember this lesson." Yiqing Luo patted her head. "In future, when you think of problems, you need to think more comprehensively and consider all the consequences." Linglong's head lowered even more guiltily. "If you know guilt, then remember what I said." Yiqing Luo pulled her wrist. "Things have already developed to such a stage. You can only be a hostage and follow me back to Feng family." Linglong nodded. After a while, DMO Xian came looking for them. The three of them headed towards the Feng residence. They just reached the Feng residence. As expected, they saw the secluded palace's disciples and the Jiang family's secret guards guarding outside. But they were just loitering outside and had no intention to barge in. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she vaguely noticed that a wisp of profound glow was faintly discernible in the sky above the Feng residence. "Is it an enchantment?" Yiqing Luo asked. DMO Xian nodded. "It should be an enchantment conjured by maternal grandfather." Maternal grandfather? This man, he changed his words really smoothly. The three of them avoided the secluded palace's disciples and approached the Feng residence from a side door. Yiqing Luo was still thinking of ways to send a message out for her maternal grandfather to fetch her. DMO Xian held her little hand and pressed it on the barrier of the enchantment. The moment her fingers touched it, the profound glow shot out. The three of them entered the Feng residence. "Feng family's bloodline can enter," DMO Xian explained. When Yiqing Luo and the rest entered, Feng family's patriarch who had set up the enchantment naturally sensed it. When Yiqing Luo pulled Linglong to the main hall, Feng family's patriarch had already welcomed them. Little Luo, are you all right?" The old man's eyes were red as his trembling hand stretched out towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo hugged her maternal grandfather and said softly, "I'm all right. Look at me. Haven't I come back safe and sound?" The old man pulled Yiqing Luo and sized her up for a while until he was sure that Yiqing Luo indeed had no injuries on her before he was assured. It was at this moment that he noticed DMO Xian, who was standing not too far away. "Xiao Xian is here too. Come here, come here." The old man's eyes lit up as he beckoned to DMO Xian. Yiqing Luo. What kind of name was that? But when he saw DMO Xian obediently walking to his side, allowing Patriarch Feng to pat his shoulder, listening to the old man's brainwashing greeting, "Little Xian is little Xian. Grandfather handing little Luo over to you was indeed the right choice. Fortunately, you were there, so she was safe. Thank you, Grandfather, for your trust. I've said before, I will protect Lil Luo well. DMO Xian gave a courteous smile. Good boy, good boy. Grandfather has always believed in you. Feng family master patted his shoulder again, and his eyes were full of joy. Yiqing Luo, she had no idea what had happened between Grandpa and Ah Xian while she was away. But Grandpa liked Ah Xian so much. She didn't have to worry about how to make her family accept Ah Xian's existence. After Master Feng was excited for a while, he saw the beautiful little girl standing aside and looking around curiously. Yiqing Luo was about to answer, but she heard a crisp little voice coming from not too far away. Ling Ling Long, seventh miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 49-41. A small figure ran towards Ling Long speedily. Ling Long, it's really you. Feng Shi grabbed Ling Long's hand with a face full of surprise. Ling Long's face was also filled with joy when he saw Feng Shi. But the next moment, she straightened her face and shook off Feng Shi's hand, staring at him fiercely. Now you know to call me? Why didn't you tell me when you were leaving? Feng Shi's little head drooped. Because you weren't there at that time. You left without a word. Have you ever thought about my feelings? Ling Long bit his lower lip and continued to be fierce. Feng Shi stretched out her little hand to grab Ling Long's hand and said in a weak voice, I left you a message, Ling Long. What if I didn't see it? Feng Shi's little face turned pale as she looked at Ling Long with red eyes. Ling Long, I really didn't mean to at that time. I had no choice. He hurriedly explained, Sister took a huge risk to sneak in there to save me. I can't drag her down. The fierce look on Ling Long's face faded slowly. She grabbed Feng Shi's hand hard. Next time, do you dare to leave me like this? Feng Shi was stunned and shook her head quickly. No. The two little ones looked at each other and smiled. Children's friendship was extremely pure. It wouldn't be mixed with any interest disputes. Although their positions might not be the same. But such a pure friendship, perhaps it could change a lot of things. It was rare for Feng family's master to see his grandson like this. He looked like a real child. He stared at Ling Long with some doubts. Yiqing Luo held Feng family patriarch's arm and said with a smile, Children should play with other children. Let's not disturb them. She held Feng family patriarch's arm and looked at Granny Feng. Granny Feng, keep an eye on them with the secret guards. When they entered the hall, Yiqing Luo then explained Ling Long's identity. Feng family patriarch's expression changed abruptly. What? The princess of Abyss Palace? Why did you bring her here? Accompany Cici and be a hostage at the same time. Yiqing Luo paused for a moment and narrated the matter of secluded Darkness Palace and Zhang family's aristocrats colluding with each other. And now they were all gathered outside the Phoenix residence, ready to make trouble in a concise and comprehensive manner. A few pieces of news came down one after another. Patriarch Feng was a little confused when DMO Xian sent Feng Shi back. Therefore, he only told him to set up a barrier to prevent anyone from kidnapping Feng Shi again. But he didn't expect things to develop to this point. Yiqing Luo supported Feng family's patriarch to sit down as she spoke with a solemn expression. Today's action should have alerted the enemy. I'm afraid that secluded palace's side will take action soon. With how careful and cunning the Abyss Palace was, once the Abyss Palace took action, the Abyss Palace would definitely be destroyed. The entire God world would definitely suffer a huge blow. It's best to inform Little Uncle's side to be prepared. Yiqing Luo continued. The heavens of the God world were about to change. Everything was as Yiqing Luo had predicted. The various aristocrats in the God realm had started to show signs of being divided. Towards the Feng family, who had been in charge of the God realm for a long time, the various aristocrats had long accumulated a lot of resentment. If the Feng family's acting God Emperor was recognized by the Divine Phoenix and obtained the Divine Phoenix's inheritance, everyone could still accept it. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love.